Chapter 1695. Han Fei couldn't help but secretly smile. So it was because of Nian that he could get on this ship? However, it didn't matter. After all, he had just arrived here, and it was not enough for him to understand this world through just one person's memories. For example, the Demoness pirate group wasn't as scary as he had imagined. When Han Fei returned to Dragon Dance with Nian couldn't help but ask, "Brother, are we still eating?" Han Fei smiled and said, "Of course. Come on, let's go cook." Han Fei didn't panic at all. It seemed that the Dragon Dance and the Pearl did not intend to leave this region of the sea for the time being. Since they didn't leave, they must have their own motives. Although staying here might be a waste of time, it was not a small matter for others to place so much importance on this matter. Han Fei knew very well that it might involve some secrets of the Savage Abyss. Since it involved the Savage Abyss, it could be related to Yin Yang, heaven, and water with heaven. Therefore, Han Fei wouldn't leave now. There weren't many people on Dragon Dance, only 48 in total. Among them, 32 were half-venerables. There wasn't a single person below the half-venerable realm. From this, it could be seen that the Dragon Dance and the Pearl were all elites. Besides, judging from a situation when Han Fei met them for the first time, these people were exploring the Savage Abyss while training their troops. The Dark Moon Wolffish was beneficial to these people, especially those half-venerables. If they were really fed tens or hundreds of Dark Moon Wolffish, they might be able to directly help them become venerable ones. At this moment, Han Fei led Nian to sit on the deck as if there was no one else around and took out a big pot casually. A Dark Moon Wolffish was pulled out by Han Fei. The big fish was tossed, and with a snap of the fingers, Saber Chi was unleashed. The infinity water cut through the Dark Moon Wolffish within a very narrow range. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of thin slices of fish meat were floating in the air, glittering and translucent. The remaining fish head, bones, skin, and organs were wrapped in a ball of water. At this time, Han Fei flicked his fingers and threw them all into the sea. A woman said, "Hey, the bones of the Dark Moon Wolffish are very good materials for refining weapons. Why did you throw them away just like that?" The one who spoke was a half-exalted realm woman with a frown on her face. Since Han Fei was tied up, he should look like he was tied up. "You and everything you have on you are ours." However, Han Fei raised his head and smiled. "What's the point of keeping the dregs? You're a member of the Dragon Dance, yet you're interested in such trash?" However, Long Wu and Pearl had seen this scene from the start. Long Wu said, "Pearl, this person is too infuriating. You've obviously been captured by us, but you act as if nothing happened. Is he really not afraid of us killing him?" Pearl said lightly, "People are only not afraid because they have confidence." Although this person said that he could only cook, did you see his knife skills just now? In the blink of an eye, the 10,000 blade shadow had cut every piece of fish into the same size, as if he had done something insignificant. From this, it can be seen how exquisite his divine control is. Long Wu frowned. "That's nothing. After all, he's a venerable. Moreover, I heard from Lil Fan that this person can fight above his level, so it should be natural for him to be able to do this." Pearl shook her head slightly. "No, a person's temperament won't lie. This person's careless control made it seem as if he was doing something insignificant. Also, from his tone and attitude when talking to you and me, it can be seen that he has no fear in his heart. Just now, when I said that I wanted that little girl, his aura made me feel a little scared. This kind of aura can't be cultivated by a small family." Long Wu said in surprise, "You mean he's a peerless heavenly talent of one of the 36 mysterious heavens?" Pearl nodded slightly. "Yes, this person is either a hidden peerless heavenly talent of one of the 13 outer heavens, or a peerless heavenly talent of one of the 13 inner heavens. Do you really think that the Marauder's ship can be taken so easily?" Long Wu's face changed slightly. "Then why did you send me a voice transmission just now?" Pearl smiled. "I don't believe that they came here just to hunt Tao-seeking fish. What if they came here for the same purpose as us? Or, forget it." Pearl wanted to say something, but hesitated. She didn't continue because it was just her personal guess. Long Wu didn't notice the details of Pearl's change, but her face turned cold. Are they also coveting the savage abyss? Pearl replied, I'm not sure, but among the 36 mysterious heavens, which one can you think of who uses a knife? Longwu said, it's hard to say. Every family has a knife cultivator. The people of the Sword God Palace are good at using swords and knives. Pearl nodded slightly. That's true. Let's observe for a few more days. Doesn't this person like to cook? Then let him do it. Let's see what he can do. On the deck, Han Fei moved slightly and ignited the spiritual fire, making the big pot boiling hot. At this time, Han Fei grabbed a large mass of water from the void. The water went into the pot, making a sizzling sound and steaming smoke. A spoonful of fish oil covered the water, and Han Fei made a gesture with one hand. It was an erased seal. Fish slices flew in the sky as if they had wings, lining up, entering the pot from the left side, and then coming out from the right side. When the fish slices came out of the pot, the fish slices flashed with golden light, which was the brightening effect of the fish oil. This was the brightening effect of the fish oil, and everyone on the boat was stunned. On the dragon dance, many people looked over. It turned out that food could be cooked like this. Even on the Pearl, a group of people was watching with their perception. Nian, who was closest to Han Fei, swallowed from time to time and clapped her little hands. Brother, it's so beautiful. Can I eat it? Han Fei smiled. You want to eat? Nian, good things come out last. You can't eat delicious food in a hurry. Don't be impatient. Remember? Yes, I remember. However, Nian Er's eyes were fixed on the fish slices. Han Fei knew that the girl didn't remember anything. She just ignored his words. Han Fei didn't care. He sprinkled the water in the pot into the sea and then steamed it. After the fish oil, minced garlic, red peppers, and ginger were fried in the pot, the dragon dance was immediately filled with a fragrant aroma. Hiss! Gulp! Oh my God, what's that? On the dragon dance, people were exclaiming to each other via voice transmission. Someone exclaimed, cooking is like practicing an unparalleled technique. How can it be so smooth? Is this person really a chef king? Bah, what chef king? He gave it to himself. Gulp! At this moment, Han Fei put the fish slices into the pot. Chilla, Han Fei said, Nian, the fish is fresh and tender. Coat it with a layer of fish oil to make it tougher. It won't break easily in this big fire. After Han Fei said that, Han Fei flipped the pot, and a pillar of fire soared to the sky, reaching 10 meters high. In the flames, golden light flickered. Han Fei smiled slightly, and a spirit-gathering array appeared in the air. When a huge amount of spiritual energy quickly gathered into the meat slices, the dish was finished. The onlookers all looked at each other in shock. So he didn't dare to cook now, because he knew the spirit-gathering technique? How could this be called cooking? This thing was simply a feast of art. It was simply too beautiful to be absorbed in. Even Long Wu and Pearl couldn't help but look at each other. Were they really wrong? Is this guy really the unique chef king in this world? Han Fei grabbed the air and used clear water as a plate. In an instant, the plate was divided into 100 parts. On each part, 88 slices of fish fell. With the plate as the center line, the fish was pushed in all directions like a lotus flower, falling in front of the onlookers. Of course, he and Yin each had a piece, and the old turtle and Xiao Sei had also come to the deck. Wouldn't they be stupid if they didn't eat delicious food? At this moment, Han Fei said leisurely, Since I'm on your ship, I really feel sorry to see that you haven't even eaten a decent dish in your entire life. This 10,000 fish slices is just a casual dish. Although the taste is ordinary, it's thousands of times better than your daily diet. Don't thank me. By the way, you'd better finish it within 10 minutes. Otherwise, when it gets cold, the taste will be greatly reduced. It's not that I'm not good at cooking, but that you don't know how to enjoy it. Han Fei's words were extremely arrogant, criticizing the food of these people. Longwu really wanted to teach this guy a lesson. However, she was the one who found them, so she still said with a black face, Eat. It's not poisonous, women. They were always reserved. Although they wanted to eat it, they just picked up a piece of fish and put it gently into their mouth. Hiss, wow, is this still a fish? It turns out that the meat of the dark moon wolf fish can be so delicious. Someone exclaimed, "How much meat of the dark moon wolf fish have we wasted before?" Someone was shocked. Is this the so-called Chef King? The speed of these women's attacks was getting faster and faster. One piece of fish after another, no one stopped eating. When the plate in front of them was empty and the steam evaporated automatically, they came back to themselves. From this moment on, the women on the dragon dance and the pearl all looked at Han Fei in a different way. In the past, they hated men, but now they didn't seem to hate men so much. Someone asked, "Hey, do you still want to cook?" Han Fei smiled. "First of all, my name is not Hey. I am Han Fei, the Chef King. You can call me Han Fei or the King of Cooking. In addition, delicious food needs to be tasted. If you eat a lot of things in a row, it's not delicious, but overeating. If you want to eat, let's do it tomorrow." Then Han Fei took out 2 bags of potato chips and began to share them with Nian. Someone said, "Didn't you say we can't eat continuously?" The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. "It's very simple. What you ate is not delicious to me." The women, first update, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1696. Even if he was to be a captive, he wanted to be a captive with high standards. Otherwise, if you were to be a yes man like the majority of the captives and be afraid, then no one would look you in the eye. One morning, 7 days later, Han Fei was fishing on the deck lazily with a fishing rod in his hand. Elder Yuan and Xiao Sei stood behind him like 2 bodyguards. Nian sat next to Han Fei, eating chips and playing with a Rubik's Cube. "You won't be able to catch anything like this. This is the savage abyss, and there are very few creatures that can live here." There weren't many dark moon wolf fish either. They had already fled when Lu Sheng's senses detected them. The success rate is almost 0. It was the woman who met Han Fei for the first time. At that time, there were 2 demigods who called her Sister Fan. Without looking back, Han Fei said casually, "In this world, there are no fish that can't fall. Only people who can't fish. Hey girl, what's your name again?" Jiang Fan's strength was close to the peak of the half-venerable realm. However, Han Fei talked to her as if he were talking to a subordinate. However, Old Turtle and Xiao Sei were both stronger than Han Fei. As a result, the 2 of them guarded Han Fei like door gods. Jiang Fan thought to himself, "This person must be a talented disciple of some family. Otherwise, why would he have 2 venerables guarding him?" The chaotic vast sea was definitely not small. Although there were 26 Zuantians in each family, there were quite a number of supremacies. However, there weren't many people who could reach Han Fei's level. Jiang Fan was wondering if he should ask Sister Wu to take him down and sell him for money. Whoosh! Han Fei didn't care about Jiang Fan's response. Han Fei suddenly raised his hand and retracted the fishing rod. In the next moment, the void trembled, and a large black fish broke through the void. What else could it be but a dark moon wolf fish? Pucci, with a flick of Han Fei's finger, the dark moon wolf fish had no time to attack Han Fei at all, and its head was cut open by Han Fei's saber, and its soul was destroyed. Smack! When the dark moon wolf fish landed on the deck, Little Time rushed up excitedly. She pressed her small hands on the huge fish's body and forcefully grabbed the dark moon pearl on the fish's head. Han Fei smiled and said, "Nian, use your power vibration." Oh, Nian grabbed the fish's head and began to shake her hands. The power of the time dragon carp could not be underestimated. It was just that Nian didn't know how to use it yet. In order to minimize the use of time manipulation in the future, Han Fei had been teaching her some simple spells. Han Fei said, "Nian, do you want to eat delicious food?" Nian recalled the taste of the hot pot and immediately nodded. "Yes." Then hit the dark moon wolf fish everywhere except its head for an hour. All right. Bang. Although Nur was only a few years old, the power of a peak law enforcer was not to be underestimated. Han Fei stood on the side and set up a big array, which covered up the power that penetrated the hull. The others all looked at Han Fei in surprise. In the savage abyss, one's perception couldn't spread far. How did Han Fei find the dark moon wolf fish? Long Wu's heart skipped a beat. When fishing in the barbaric abyss, The most important thing was to use the power of one's divine soul to control the threads of spiritual energy. After all, the suction force from the barbaric abyss was very powerful. If one was careless, it was easy to fail to control the line. Judging from the distance Han Fei traveled just now, Han Fei's fishing range actually exceeded 3,000 kilometers. In other words, the divine soul power that Han Fei applied to the fishing line was extremely accurate, which allowed him to have the ability to explore the surroundings with the fishing hook. In the barbaric abyss, even she and Pearl might not be able to fish from a distance of 3,000 kilometers. It was possible for them to perceive that far, but fishing was absolutely impossible. It could be seen that Han Fei's strength was by no means as simple as a junior venerable. However, the next moment, a scene that shocked Long Wu appeared. Han Fei waved his hand and actually used the chaotic energy as bait and hung it on the fishing hook. Long Wu was dumbfounded. Using the chaotic energy as bait? Is this guy crazy? How many wisps of chaotic energy can a junior venerable have? How can you save your life if you use it to fish? Long Wu was about to ask when she saw Pearl step to her side. Pearl shook her head slightly. As long as the power of the divine soul is controlled well, it is completely possible to take back the chaotic energy. As the saying goes, those who are skilled are bold. If this person dares to do this, he must have a sense of propriety. No one who can cultivate to this level is a fool. In fact, neither Pearl nor Long Wu knew that the range of Han Fei's fishing hook had reached more than 6,000 kilometers. Only the farther away from the hull, some creatures would appear. Originally, Han Fei just wanted to fish for the Dark Moon Wolf fish and obtain its soul. Because his soul power was still more than 5,000 points away from the limit of 200,000 points. Logically speaking, Han Fei hadn't reached the advanced level of the Half-King realm yet. At this time, it should be difficult for his soul power to break through the threshold of 200,000 points, but Han Fei wanted to give it a try. How could he know if he didn't give it a try? Half an hour later, to Han Fei's surprise, he found a white shadow in the sea that had quietly arrived. Hiss! Suddenly, Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Today, I didn't use the 9-Palace Fate Ruler. Did my luck change? He knew that thing. What was it if not the Tao-seeking fish? Han Fei had eaten the Tao-seeking fish when he was on the Beast Island. Although he only had a little bit, Han Fei knew that it was extremely difficult to catch this fish. Besides, he didn't have an epiphany last time. It didn't make sense for pure, chaotic chi to appear in this sea. No creature that could cultivate to this level was an idiot. Therefore, 6,000 kilometers away, Han Fei had been using the chaotic chi as bait and disguised himself as a mussel. This mussel was only less than the half-venerable level, but its aura was unstable. It was crawling to the outside world against the turbulence. With Han Fei's current abilities, he had already mastered the water vein technique. Originally, he only wanted to lure the half-venerable Dark Moon Wolf fish, but he didn't expect to attract a Tao-seeking fish. The Tao-seeking fish was probing carefully and observing from a distance. Its half-hidden body was a bit like when Han Fei first learned the art of concealment. This was clearly a hunt. The mussel under Han Fei's control suddenly became alert, as if it had sensed something wrong. The mussel's body quickly turned into a stone and stayed still at the bottom of the sea. The Tao-seeking fish, seeing that the mussel was so smart, didn't panic. It waited patiently. After about a quarter of an hour, Han Fei finally controlled the mussel to move. The Tao-seeking fish seemed to be suspicious. Why would a creature of this level be so restless? Why did it move so quickly when it sensed danger? Therefore, the Tao-seeking fish hesitated. Han Fei seemed to have expected something. He controlled the mussel and, with a buzz, it instantly appeared 500 miles away. The Tao-seeking fish was stunned when it saw that. It thought, what a fast escape speed. So, the mussel was alert and purposely exposed a flaw so that it could escape quickly. But what was the Tao-seeking fish for? It was born to seek Tao. It could sense where the power of Tao exceeded the limit. Just now, when the mussel was running, it revealed its Taoist aura. Therefore, a moment later, when the Tao-seeking fish approached the mussel again, it became even more cautious. This time, When the Tao-seeking fish was less than 10 kilometers away from the mussel was about to escape, but the Tao-seeking fish suddenly attacked. Its speed was so fast that it was terrifying. A white light flickered and hit the mussel. However, the moment the white light flickered, the mussel turned into a net. Han Fei caught the Tao-seeking fish with the power of his divine soul and pulled the hook. In the blink of an eye, the sky shook, and a white light appeared in the sky. The moment the Tao-seeking fish appeared, Han Fei hooked it up with the void lines and activated the sky-stealing art. Exclamations could be heard on Dragon Dance. Someone was shocked. It's a Tao-seeking fish. That guy caught a Tao-seeking fish? Someone gasped. Since when can a Tao-seeking fish be caught? Long Wu was also shocked. She asked in surprise, Pearl, how did he catch one? Pearl said with a wry smile, we can't sense his fishing range at all. This guy is very weird. He's fishing a Tao-seeking fish on Dragon Dance, and he's not afraid that we'll rob him. Long Wu frowned. Should we rob him? Pearl shook her head. We don't know his background, and his identity is strange. Have you ever seen a man with a kid? He has 2 guardians, which means he's not an ordinary man. It's not worth it to fight over a Tao-seeking fish. Let's wait and see. Long Wu asked. Then why do we keep him alive? Pearl said. Maybe he knows something that we don't. At this moment, information popped up in Han Fei's eyes. Name Tao-seeking fish, introduction, a legendary creature that often appears in dangerous places. This fish is born to pursue the Tao-seeking Tao. It could devour spiritual energy and decompose the power of Tao. Therefore, the chaotic energy inside its body is more than a few times more than a normal person. This fish is good at hiding and is extremely difficult to catch. It likes places with strong Tao. Level 81, quality, legendary, Tao, heaven melting, contains chaotic energy greater than 12 strands. Effect, it can improve one's power of understanding and strengthen one's Tao heart. Collectible, Heart of Tao, absorbable. Remark, the Heart of Tao is not very effective if taken frequently. Heart of Tao. Chilla, Han Fei drew out his knife. A narrow cut appeared on the body of the Tao-seeking fish, and a fish heart appeared in Han Fei's hand at some point. Han Fei took the Heart of Tao and activated it. Calabash, absorb, second update. Please vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 1697. The most useful thing about the Tao-seeking fish was the Heart of Tao. After taking it, Han Fei wouldn't care about the fish me anymore. While stealing the soul power and vitality of the Tao-seeking fish with the sky-stealing technique, Han Fei absorbed the chaotic energy inside the Tao-seeking fish with the demon purification pot. A Tao-seeking fish was dissected and absorbed by Han Fei. Not a single bit of its energy was wasted. Han Fei planned to keep the meat and make a mushroom fish stew later. The taste wouldn't be bad either. Of course, none of the people present could see what Han Fei did. In their eyes, Han Fei just caught the Tao-seeking fish and took back the Heart of Tao. At that moment, many people turned to look at Long Wu and Pearl. The gist of it was that the Heart of Tao was expensive. It's even priceless. Shouldn't we rob it? After all, we're pirates. But Han Fei didn't care. Do they really dare to rob me? Then I'll beat them to death. What's wrong with women? In the world of cultivators, there was no such thing as a man or a woman. Only the strong and the weak. However, Long Wu and Pearl didn't say anything, and Han Fei naturally put away the Heart of Tao. Clang, seeing that nobody was giving him any trouble, Han Fei took out his big pot and said, let's make a deal. I'll only cook 1 dish a day, and you'll just have a taste. You want to eat here? That's impossible. Humph, someone was speechless and mumbled. Why are you so arrogant? He's just a chef. Someone shook his head. This chef is impressive. He took the Heart of Tao, but the 2 captains didn't say anything. But in the dark, Long Wu was furious and couldn't help but ask, Pearl, what exactly do you like about them? Pearl said casually, Long Wu, you know that we have to treat everything about the barbaric abyss seriously. I don't believe that anyone would come to the barbaric abyss just to eat and drink. This man is suspicious. Long Wu said, there are too many suspicious people. They even used the ship of the marauders. Who knew if these people were actually the pirates in disguise? Their purpose is to steal our exploration of the barbaric abyss. Pearl was silent for a moment, then said leisurely, "At least, there is something wrong with their combination. There were 3 humans. One of them was a child who had reached the peak of law enforcer at the age of a few years, and the other was a tortoise demon. Have you heard of beasts that can transform into humans?" Long Wu shook her head. "Never. But someone has guessed this question before, right?" Pearl looked at Long Wu. "Do you still remember the purpose of the Demoness pirates coming to the savage abyss?" Long Wu took a deep breath and looked at Pearl in surprise. "You can't be thinking that they came out from inside, right?" In the darkness where the two of them were talking, a pure black shadow moved slightly. If it wasn't Han Fei's body of black fog, what was it? Han Fei's eyes flickered with astonishment while he was dissecting the Tao-seeking fish as he thought to himself, how did they know someone would come out from the desolate abyss? Pearl and Long Wu considered themselves to be half-monarch realm experts, and they were not ordinary half-monarch realm experts. Therefore, they naturally didn't take Han Fei and the others seriously, nor did they think that Han Fei could hear them. Therefore, the two of them were chatting naturally, without any wariness. Pearl said, "At least, this is the biggest movement in the desolate abyss in the past 10,000 years. Not only us, but many people from the outer 13 heavens have also come, including the Marauders. However, we just had to meet these people. Perhaps they're the chosen ones who snuck out of the sect. But no matter what their motives are, they are not simple. Therefore, we can either keep them or cook for them if they want. Let the Guardian go back and investigate them. If they are from the outer 13 heavens, do you think someone will come to save them?" Long Wu's eyes lit up. "So, if we can't find their information and no one comes to save them, it means that they are very likely related to the desolate abyss?" Pearl nodded. "We can't be sure. Let Teacher Xian Feng do it." "Huh?" Long Wu was dumbfounded. "You need the demoness to do it for such a small matter?" Pearl couldn't help but look at Long Wu. "Do you think it's a small matter?" Long Wu smiled awkwardly. "Okay, I'll do it now." Speaking of which, Han Fei was a little confused. Listening to the conversation between the two, Pearl actually suspected that he came from the desolate abyss. Why was that? As a normal person who met them on the ship of the Marauders, they wouldn't associate them with the desolate abyss, right? And just because of this little suspicion, this Pearl actually wanted to go to the outer 13 heavens to investigate him. And she even called the Xian Feng demon girl over. Was her brain hit by an ironhead fish? However, from the conversation between the two, Han Fei also made some unexpected discoveries. The witch pirates were very concerned about the desolate abyss. The mission of the Demoness pirates that Pearl and Long Wu mentioned was obviously related to whether or not anyone came out of the barbaric abyss from this point. Han Fei could be sure. First of all, the witch pirates were very sure that there were people in the desolate abyss. Secondly, the witch pirates were always paying attention to all the changes in the desolate abyss. Just now, they mentioned that the desolate abyss was quite noisy. Now, Han Fei suspected that the so-called noise might be the energy that old Yuan helped him suppress. With his current physique, he was almost blown up by that energy. When he found this slightly safer exit from the fork in the desolate abyss, there was indeed a terrifying force that instantly pulled him out. Logically speaking, with his current experience, it was almost impossible for a half-king realm cultivator to bear that kind of energy. It was probably just a coincidence that he could bear it. Long Wu acted without hesitation. She ordered one of the 3 ships to change its course and head back directly. Han Fei thought to himself, "I've just arrived and you're already investigating me? If you investigate me, won't I have to show up in the outer 13 heavens?" At that time, if there was really something wrong with me, the witch pirates naturally wouldn't be able to catch me. But what if other pirate groups and people from the outer 13 heavens knew that I came out of the desolate abyss? At that time, there was almost no doubt that they would become the target of public criticism. In particular, he had a child with him. His characteristics were so obvious, which would definitely make things difficult for him in the future. Therefore, the protector could not be allowed to leave. Han Fei couldn't wait any longer. No matter what the purpose of the witch pirates was, they had been paying attention to the desolate abyss. He had to keep it a secret. The location of the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven couldn't be disclosed. Otherwise, with the current strength of the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven, it was impossible for them to resist any force here. Even if only one pirate group went there, they wouldn't be able to resist. What a joke. The top 10 pirate groups here all had kings. Even the Demonist pirate group, which was ranked 10th, had 4 of the strongest quasi-kings and countless venerables under their command, let alone the other powers. Han Fei suddenly got up, glanced at Old Yuan and Xiao Se, and said to them via voice transmission, "Get ready. I'm going to take you back to the sea-quelling painting. We don't have to stay in the witch pirates anymore. It's time for these women to die." However, just as the Guardian was about to leave and Han Fei was about to take action, suddenly, Han Fei looked at the void in the distance, only to see a large area of the void was broken. Swish, 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 5 black shark ships broke out of the void in a row. This thing was like a space jump. Those who didn't know might think it was a spaceship. Now, Han Fei was a little confused. How did these people locate them? It suddenly appeared without any warning. Here, even the perception of a half-king wasn't very far. How did these ships know that the Pearl and the Dragon Dance were here? Long Wu, Wang Jin. I really didn't expect that. I would actually meet you here. Oh, Xian Feng is not here. What a coincidence. At the moment the big black ship appeared, Pearl and Long Wu both shouted, "Activate the ship array and prepare to defend against the enemy." As they spoke, Pearl appeared on the mast at the top of the ship, and the battle suit on her body instantly crystallized and turned into a dazzling pearl battle suit. She grabbed dozens of silk threads in her hand. The 3 big ships were pulled by the silk threads, and the ship array was fully activated. Long Wu drew her knife and shouted, "Phoenix King Cannon, ready." As a bystander, Han Fei saw that this group of pirates was full of vigor in an instant. Everyone was tense, but no one panicked. Jiang Fan's eyes were filled with determination. He was determined to fight to the end. It seemed that as soon as the enemy came, their combat power soared to 120%. On the other side of the hull, there was a middle-aged man with a ferocious face. His chest was open, and he was holding 2 black thorns in his hands. He was wearing thorny armor and laughing creepily. Han Fei immediately recognized him. Damn it, who else could it be if not the crazy 4 kings? Han Fei and the old turtle looked at each other. What the F***CK was this luck? As soon as they came out of the savage abyss, there were boss-level bandits everywhere. Didn't the pirate kings not come out? Why did they come out too? It seemed that the things in the savage abyss this time might be beyond Han Fei's imagination. Just now, according to Pearl, there were some people from the outer 13 heavens on the periphery of this sea area. The old turtle said, "You should be able to run away, right?" Han Fei shrugged. "It shouldn't be a big problem." Part 3. Please vote for me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1698. The Demonist pirate crew's fate would definitely not end well. After all, they had kings on their side, while they only had 2.5 kings. No matter how powerful they were only half-kings, unless Pearl and Long Wu were as strong as Han Fei. Otherwise, they could only rely on their ships to resist the attacks of the marauders. Long Wu shouted, "Get ready for void teleportation." Ha! Wild laughter came from the 5 marauders that the 4 mad kings were on. The crazy 4 kings burst into laughter. "Little Long Wu, I'm here. Do you really think you can run away? I won't stop you if you dare to teleport." At this moment, Pearl ordered, "Don't worry about this lunatic's nonsense. It's impossible for a king to move quietly. Get ready for void teleportation. Besides, if we can hold on until the witch arrives, we'll be saved." The 4 mad kings dashed out and stood in the void. "Wang Zhenju, maybe the Pearl and the Dragon Dance can hold on for a while. However, your Guardian isn't a warlord-class flagship. It won't be able to withstand the blows of this king's hammer. Even if I didn't do anything, they wouldn't be able to withstand our Fish King cannon." Pearl and Long Wu's expressions changed drastically. The 4 mad kings were right. Their ships could resist the kings for a while. However, the protector wouldn't last more than 100 breaths before it was destroyed. The 4 mad kings said, "Wang Zhenju, I don't hate Xian Feng. As long as you tell this king what your witch pirate crew is looking for, perhaps this king will let you off. Pearl said coldly, "What if I don't tell you?" The four mad kings laughed. "It's fine if you don't tell me. Do you think you can wait for Xianfeng to come? Now that I've made a move, how can I give her a chance? Even if Xianfeng is here, does she dare to challenge me? I'll give you 10 minutes. If you don't agree, I'll destroy the protector first. As for the pearl and the dragon dance, you can go back to the marauders' camp with the half-kings." Ha ha! The four mad kings laughed hard, as if they were happy to meet the dragon dance and the pearl. Han Fei was speechless. Are the kings of the 36 mysterious heavens so worthless? Say it, say it. He had seen the four mad kings roaming around Martial Emperor's city from the memories of that high-level venerable on the marauder's ship. Wasn't Martial Emperor's city quite far away from here? Just as the four mad kings were laughing hard, someone seemed to have said something to him. He turned his eyes to Han Fei. The mad fourth king said, "Woo, you got guts, kid. How dare you rob the ship of my marauders? How dare you kill this prince's men? I wonder, who gave you the courage?" After the mad four kings said that, the crew of Dragon Dance and the Pearl all looked at Han Fei. Han Fei, on the other hand, had a headache too. He never thought that he would run into the mad four kings so soon. His trip this time was really as simple as finding a person. Why did such a simple thing become so complicated? Han Fei shrugged and said, "Who asked your men to attack us first? If he had known earlier, he would have killed all the people on that ship. What a blunder." Han Fei was telling the truth. Han Fei didn't think that the death of an advanced venerable would attract the four mad kings. Besides, it had been a few months since he hijacked the ship. If he hadn't accidentally boarded Dragon Dance, this wouldn't have happened. It could only be said that the weather was unpredictable. Everything in the world was possible. In the future, he had to be more ruthless. Otherwise, other people would think that he was a kind person. The four mad kings' mouth twitched. "Kid, you're gutsy. But today is the day of your death." Han Fei looked at Long Wu and Pearl, then looked at the four mad kings and said, "Then you have to defeat Dragon Dance first." Long Wu shouted in a low voice, "Han Fei, shut up." Han Fei shrugged. "Would they stop fighting if I shut up?" What a joke. He was just burying his head in the sand. The muscles on the mad four kings' face twitched as they said in a stern voice, "Wang Zhenju, if you tell me the purpose of the Demonist pirates and hand this man over, I'll let you go. How you choose depends on you. Wu, you still have 3 breaths of time." Pearl was silent and didn't speak. She didn't care whether she handed over Han Fei or not. The problem was that the four mad kings wouldn't let them go no matter what she said. Let them go. That was just what the four mad kings said. Pearl wasn't stupid. When the 3 seconds were up, the four mad kings suddenly attacked. The 2 awls in their hands pierced tens of thousands of meters into the sea like rainbows piercing through the sun, splitting the whirlpool. Clink, clink, with 2 screeches, the protector was enveloped by a layer of shields. However, the color flickered with one glance. Han Fei could tell that in the face of a terrifying attack from a king, especially one like the Mad Four Kings, which might even have an armor-piercing attack, the protector wouldn't even be able to last for 50 breaths. It would be broken, or even less. Han Fei said to them telepathically, "Nina, don't wander around me. Later, don't resist. Let's go to Earth 9 and play hide-and-seek." Nien grabbed Han Fei's sleeve and said, "Brother, is that a bad guy?" Han Fei said with a smile, "Obviously." Nien asked, "Brother, are we going to beat the bad guys?" Han Fei smiled and said, "Nien, if you want to beat the bad guys, you have to see how strong they are. If the bad guys are stronger than you have to wait. When they're stronger than you can beat them. That's the right way to beat the bad guys." Nien asked, "But won't the bad guys do bad things during this time?" Han Fei said, "In every second that we experience, someone is doing bad things. However, no one can pay attention to all the bad things. Nien, remember, where there are people, there will be trouble. This is the law of nature, and it can't be stopped." Okay. On the side, Xiao Sei was already very nervous. Seeing that Han Fei was still teaching the kids here and instilling these things into them, she felt very uncomfortable. At this moment, both Pearl and the 4 Mad Kings heard Han Fei's preaching. However, no one paid any attention to him. What the Mad 4 Kings were thinking was, I'll capture this person later and torture him. Pearl and Long Wu, on the other hand, felt that the two of them were obviously weird. How could this person still have the time to preach here at this critical juncture? Just how big did his heart have to be? Bam, bam, bam. The moment the four Mad Kings attacked the Guardian, the five ships on the opposite side opened their mouths and bombarded with the Fish King cannons. However, the Fish King cannons only bombarded the Guardian. It was obvious that the four insane kings wanted to take down the Protector as soon as possible. At that time, he could use the people on the Protector to threaten Pearl, and it would become a one-sided psychological suppression. Unless Pearl had no feelings for her subordinates. Otherwise, how would she choose at that time? Pearl, however, gave a decisive order. Phoenix King cannons stopped them. Boom, boom, boom. Forces that were much more powerful than the attack of a half-king collided in midair. The aftermath of the explosions spread across 1,000 kilometers, causing waves to soar into the sky. The moment the Pearl and the Dragon Dance bombarded each other, Han Fei was surprised. The power of the Phoenix King cannons was the combination of the Pearl and the Dragon Dance. Among them, the Pearl launched the scorching power of Yang, and the Dragon Dance launched the cold power of ice. The two kinds of powers combined and interweaved in the air, forming the ice and fire yin-yang force. Han Fei frowned. Is it a coincidence, or... The Mad Four Kings burst into laughter. Pearl Wang, how many attacks can the Pearl and Dragon Dance launch with the energy they have stored? At most, it will last for about 10 seconds. It's meaningless to this king. Pearl said without hesitation, Sisters, the four Mad Kings can't be trusted. Either we die, or we gather all our forces and wait for Lord Xianfeng. There is no third option. Now, everyone, take out all the resources you have on you and use them to fill in the gaps. The old turtle said, Is the power they use similar to the sun, yin-yang wheel of the yin-yang heaven? Han Fei thought to himself, yes, but not exactly the same. At this moment, in the fleet, Long Wu said anxiously, Pearl, what should we do? At this rate, the Pearl and Dragon Dance's power will be depleted. Our fleet won't be able to hold on for more than 200 breaths. However, Pearl said lightly, no, if we can't hold on, teleport directly to the depths of the savage abyss. Long Wu was shocked. Are you crazy? The savage abyss is so terrifying. It is known as the place where even kings die. Aren't we courting death by teleporting there? Pearl smiled faintly. Xiao Wu, how long have you been in the Witch Pirates? Long Wu was stunned for a moment and quickly replied, the year 1206. Pearl said leisurely, it's been more than 1,000 years. There are some things that I should tell you. At least before you die, I should let you know why we have been exploring the savage abyss. Long Wu was shocked and immediately looked at Pearl in astonishment. On the deck, Han Fei's lips also curled into a smile. It seems that there are indeed secrets. Pearl said, Xiao Wu, the Witch Pirates used to be called the Lunar Academy, one of the two strongest academies in the yin-yang heaven, ranked 9th among the 36 mysterious heavens. And the savage abyss is very likely to be the hidden place of our yin-yang heaven. Smack! Before Long Wu could react, Han Fei slapped his thigh and muttered, Mother F*** King awesome. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1699. Han Fei didn't expect that he would run into people from the Lunar Academy as soon as he left the yin-yang heaven. Moreover, the Lunar Academy had become the Demoness Pirates now? Oldman Run said, the Lunar Academy was lost in the war back then. Therefore, yin-yang heaven only had the Thug Academy, which was the pure Yang sect, but not the Lunar Academy. Now, when Han Fei heard that the Witch Pirates turned out to be the former Moon Academy, then everything made sense. Why did the Demoness Pirate group pay attention to the Savage Abyss? Why did the Demoness Pirates send out 2 of their great generals when the Savage Abyss was slightly shaken? As it turned out, although these people were from the Demoness Pirates, the Demoness Pirates essentially belonged to the Lunar Academy. This was a pirate group made up entirely of women and an all-women academy. Han Fei didn't know what to say. He had planned to kill these two women. In the end, these two turned out to be his teammates. However, after swearing, Han Fei didn't intend to get to know Pearl and the others again. After all, the timing wasn't right. Outside, the Mad Four Kings were making their moves. If the Black Phoenix Demon Lady did not arrive within 100 breaths, the three ships would be doomed. But on second thought, even if there was time to introduce them to each other, it was not necessary. No matter how low the Demoness pirate crew's ranking was, they still had a king. The Black Phoenix Demoness was a sea expansion realm expert. But what about him? The true master of the Yin-Yang Heaven had yet to open his sea. Even if Xian Feng was willing to hand over the Demoness pirates to him, what could he use them for? Would he be able to control them? Therefore, Han Fei had an idea. Instead of submitting to them, the Lunar Academy might as well exist independently as the witch pirates. Although they want to find the Yin-Yang Heaven, no one knew why they were looking for it. Moreover, the independent existence of the Lunar Academy could perhaps also become a trump card for him in the future. With this in mind, Han Fei immediately sorted out his thoughts. It would not be nice to recognize her now. However, in this situation, Han Fei couldn't run anymore. In the end, it was his own people who were beaten up. How could the forces of the Lunar Academy allow the Marauders to attack them on a whim? At this time, Han Fei couldn't help but shout at Long Wu and Pearl, "Hey, run faster. What are you all standing around for? Let's not talk about whether you can run or not, but you guys have to run first." "Shut up." Long Wu glanced at them, and Zhang Fan scolded, "Don't disturb the captain. If we run now, it's the same as ruining the route." Han Fei cursed. "Did you hit your head with an ironhead fish? It was just a route. What's the big deal about losing it?" Long Wu was about to berate her, but Pearl's eyes lit up, and she pulled Long Wu back. But Pearl didn't do anything else. She continued to fire the ice and fire Yin-Yang cannon, the so-called Phoenix King cannon. Zhang Fan glared at Han Fei and said, "What do you know? This is our main route. Once the route is exposed, it's very likely that we'll be pursued by the other party, and the Demoness pirate crew will be in danger of being annihilated." Han Fei's lips twitched. "We're about to die, and you're still talking about the route. What the hell are you talking about? If we lose the route, we'll explore again. The Demoness pirate crew has lost 2 generals and more than 60 members. God knows when we could train more." However, Han Fei's words sounded very disdainful to the others. Someone on the Demoness pirate crew's side even shouted, "Men are really unreliable. They're cowards who are afraid of death." "That's right. If you want to live, why don't you run away yourself?" F***CK, Han Fei was stunned. What a bunch of stubborn fools. You guys still have the nerve to say that you're from the Lunar Academy? My Thug Academy has such an excellent campus culture. When it came to you, what have you developed into? Are you stubborn? Ha ha ha. At this moment, the crazy 4 kings laughed. This kid is right. Wang Zhenju, Long Wu, why don't you try to escape? Why don't I stay and you can choose one of them to escape? What if you escape? Ah, the Marauders roared with laughter. Someone sneered, "Women, you're not decisive enough. If we had run at the beginning, maybe one of our ships would have escaped." Someone laughed. "That's right. It's just a shipping route. Whether it's the Pearl or the Dragon Dance, it's worth it." Someone laughed heartily. "Actually, we wouldn't be willing to let you die, as long as you obediently follow us back to the Marauders' camp." Ah, listening to the laughter, Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, no matter what realm you're in, human nature is like this. They were all too happy. On the Demoness pirate crew's side, at the moment of life and death, everyone looked extremely awful. How could ordinary people be in the mood to argue with them? At this moment, Han Fei took out 2 bags of potato chips, handed one to Nian Er, and ate the other for himself. Crunch. "Nian Er, are you afraid?" Nian Er shook her head. "No, brother. Are they all bad guys?" Han Fei nodded. "Yes, under normal circumstances, these people are very eloquent, but their strength is not very good. In the future, they usually won't be very promising. Nian Er, in the future, let's not talk." Nian Er nodded. "Then beat them." Han Fei said with a smile, "You can't just beat them. As the saying goes, cut the weeds and eliminate the roots." A while ago, Big Brother hesitated for a moment, which led to this series of consequences. Xiaosei immediately felt uncomfortable. How old is Little Master? You want to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots? Nian looked at Han Fei curiously and asked, "Do you kill them?" Han Fei nodded. This is a world where the strong prey on the weak. If you don't kill them, someone will kill you. It's that simple. For example, if someone wants to steal your path, you kill him. Speaking of this, Han Fei seemed to think of something. Back then, Shimin Linglin's spiritual heritage was robbed. Glancing at Long Wu and Pearl, Han Fei continued to educate them. However, if the enemy is much stronger than you, it's obviously not worthwhile to fight them head-on. At this time, no matter how high the price is, you have to run. Don't be afraid of being humiliated. Those who are afraid of being humiliated are already dead. A real strong person dares to face a strong enemy and has the courage to recognize their current situation. Long Wu immediately shouted, "Han Fei, shut up. Do you believe that I'll kill you right now?" On the witch pirates, many people were furious. Han Fei was so sarcastic and scolding them. The Mad Four Kings looked at Han Fei with great interest. "Boy, you're interesting. You're bad-tempered, but you're reasonable. Boy, although you're a bit weak, how about you join the Marauders after I destroy the Dragon Dance?" Hearing the Mad Four Kings' words, many people on the Dragon Dance looked at Han Fei coldly. If Han Fei dared to say yes, it was not hard to imagine what would happen to him. Crunch, however, Han Fei chewed a potato chip and said, "Niner, there is another kind of person in this world. This kind of person is very calculative and always wants to trick and take advantage of you. There's something you must remember. The best way to destroy a group of people, a force, or an organization is to disintegrate it from the inside." Niner blinked her big eyes and scratched her hair as if she didn't understand. Han Fei didn't think much of it. At this moment, he turned his head to look at the Mad Four Kings with a faint smile on his face. Han Fei smiled disdainfully. "Damn it. Who do you think you are? You want me to join your Marauders? Can your Marauders resist me? Son of a B****, if I could beat you, I would have gone out and rubbed you under the water." At that moment, everyone was dumbfounded. On the Dragon Dance, a group of women looked at Han Fei in shock. The ship-array may be broken in a moment. "You're King provoking the king? Do you want me tortured to death?" Long Wu was completely stunned. He cursed the king? What the hell? Even she had never thought of cursing the king, but Han Fei just did it. Pearl still didn't speak, but her eyes became deeper. Nian looked at Han Fei in surprise. "Brother, you just said that if you can fight, don't talk," Han Fei said with a smile. "Nian, what I teach you never includes yourself. That's relative to others. You must remember this." Okay, on the Marauders' side, countless people were shocked. What the hell? How dare he curse the Four Kings? Is he out his mind? Immediately, someone cursed, "You be starred. I'm going to cut off your tongue." Someone shouted, "Brat, how dare you insult the Four Kings? I'm going to make you regret coming to this world." Someone smirked, "Brat, your life is over. I'm going to make your skull into a wine cup." Even the four Mad Kings were taken aback. Even the muscles on his face were trembling. He sneered coldly. Good, good, good. What a sharp-tongued brat. Since you want to die early, I'll satisfy you." Clank, 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 the Mad Four Kings personally attacked the Dragon Dance, and he even shouted in a low voice, "Destroy the protector for me. I want to see which one you are protecting." Sigh. Han Fei heaved a long sigh and turned to Nian. "Nian, let's go play with Bunny, shall we?" Nian's eyes glittered, but then she asked, "Brother, are you going to beat up the bad guys?" Han Fei smiled. "Of course." Nian immediately clenched her fists and said, "Then come on, brother." Illusions of mountains and rivers appeared out of nowhere. Nian, Old Yuan, and Xiaosei were all taken in. No one stopped this scene, but it attracted too much attention. However, Han Fei had a small world that could take in living people. This immediately aroused the interest of many people. The Four Kings laughed aloud. "I didn't expect that I would get a small world for free. Looks like this prince's luck on this trip is not an ordinary kind of good." However, Han Fei stood up and said leisurely, "The four kings, right? Okay, with the king and the two generals of the witch pirates as witnesses, it's not bad." At that moment, Han Fei's demeanor suddenly changed, and his aura became stronger and stronger. In the blink of an eye, his aura had risen to the half-king realm. Han Fei shouted, "My name is Han Fei. From today on, I solemnly announce the official establishment of the Avengers." Second update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1700. When Han Fei announced the establishment of the Avengers, many people thought he was a fool. However, Han Fei's momentum couldn't be underestimated. That ostentatious and wild murderous aura caused Pearl and Long Wu to unconsciously suck in a breath of cold air. Pearl and Long Wu were both in the half-king realm, but they felt scared. Han Fei, on the other hand, turned his head and glanced at Pearl. Han Fei's lips curled up slightly, and with a swish, he appeared outside the formation of ships. Han Fei's momentum was still rising. Han Fei's voice was relaxed, and he said with a smile, "The motto of the Avengers is that whoever dares to mess with me, I will destroy him." The four Mad Kings narrowed their eyes and looked at Han Fei in a daze. "Is this kid crazy? How dare you come out?" However, seeing that Han Fei's power was still rising, the four Mad Kings instantly broke through the void and pierced the sky with their two-alls. Han Fei, on the other hand, grabbed the void with both hands, and two void blades flew up. Boom, rumble. Within hundreds of kilometers, the sea collapsed and the void shattered. A chaotic storm swept across the sea. Countless people on the Pearl Dragon Dance, and the Marauder's ship cried out in alarm. Especially on the Pearl, Long Wu exclaimed, "How is it possible? Even if he hid his strength, how can a half-venerable fight a king?" The rest of the venerables, and even half-venerables who had eaten Han Fei's food, were all dumbfounded. They thought he was just a chef, but he was so powerful. People like Zhang Fan were so shocked that they swallowed their saliva. They even scolded Han Fei. As for those who said that Han Fei was a coward, they were even more shocked at this moment. A half-king had defeated a king? That had never happened before. Han Fei was the first. It was also the first time in their lives that they had seen it. The four Mad Kings' faces changed greatly. What a strong power. The opponent was only a half-king, but the power he exerted had reached the Pioneer Sea realm, and not just the ordinary Pioneer Sea realm. In the blink of an eye, the power of the Great Path collided with each other. The power of the four Mad Kings' second attack suddenly increased a lot. His entire body was covered in light yellow armor, and he seemed to be in a berserk state. Seeing this, Han Fei disintegrated a wisp of chaotic energy into his body, and with a backhand, he punched out a sacrificing punch. "Ha! Today, I will savor the pleasure of slaughtering geniuses." Boom! With a sacrificing punch, Han Fei blasted the four Mad Kings back for more than 200 kilometers. However, the four Mad Kings merely crossed their arms and forcefully blocked the attack. They were still yelling crazily. Han Fei immediately understood why the four Mad Kings were called the four Mad Kings. It was because their great Tao could increase their strength by almost 50%. This was even more powerful than the White Armor Emperor. The White Armor Emperor was strong in defense, but the four Crazy Kings were strong in both strength and defense. And in terms of combat experience, how rich was Han Fei? The moment the sacrificing punch touched the four Mad Kings, Han Fei knew that he couldn't defeat this person. Since he couldn't defeat them, why should he fight them head-on? He was iron-headed. So at that moment, the embroidery needle was already in Han Fei's hand. At the moment when the Mad Four Kings retreated, Han Fei knocked on the heavenly gate and created a finger-thick crack in the Marauder's formation. With this gap, Han Fei used Dipper transposition and directly appeared on the Marauder's ship. After all, the four Mad Kings were kings. Although they were careless just now and didn't expect that Han Fei could break the ship formation in an instant. At this moment, they returned in an instant. But in the blink of an eye, when Han Fei entered the ship, he grabbed the void, and a strange blue halo flowed in front of him. He drew his saber and slashed, and the hull of the ship was cut. A half-king realm master was just about to use the power of the great Tao to block, but Han Fei used the world's end near at hand and brought him in front of him. Puff! Han Fei directly pierced the heart of the half-king realm master and tore him into two pieces. As for the four Mad Kings, they had almost touched Han Fei in a very short period of time. But the corners of Han Fei's mouth curved slightly, and he said, "Explode." Boom! The terrible explosion directly blew up the Marauders' pirate ship. There were nearly 50 people on this ship. At the moment of the explosion, all the half-king realm masters were killed, and not a single one was left. And the explosion broke out from the body of the half-king. Tied by Han Fei with the void lines, the half-king realm master died directly, without any room for resistance. "Bastard! You deserve to die." The four Mad Kings roared angrily and found an opportunity to punch Han Fei 100 miles away. At this moment, the witch pirates were dumbfounded. It wasn't that they hadn't experienced a battle between kings, but the terrifying thing was that Han Fei could destroy one of the four Mad Kings' ships. And he also killed a half-king realm master. Long Wu was shocked and said, "Is he a king?" While Pearl was surprised, she shouted, "Void teleportation, go!" The battle happened in the blink of an eye. In an instant, Pearl realized one thing. Han Fei's strength was beyond her imagination. Judging from Han Fei's thunderous means of killing a half-king realm master in an instant, she and Long Wu were no match for Han Fei at all. However, the other party pretended to be a chef and stayed on her ship for 7 or 8 days. Why? And if the other party was really so strong, then didn't he hear all the conversation between her and Long Wu? Originally, she should have felt frightened. If Han Fei was not a good person, the secret of the witch pirates would be exposed. But why did Han Fei choose to take action at this time? Why? Han Fei could have waited until the four Mad Kings broke the ship formation and the two sides fought fiercely, and then took the opportunity to escape. With his strength that could fight against kings, he wanted to escape? It shouldn't be a big problem. But not only did Han Fei not escape, but he also announced the Avengers and personally fought in an earth-shattering battle. This was clearly to create a chance for them to escape. So, Pearl's first reaction was to run. As long as the four Mad Kings didn't come, the Marauders would lose another ship. Would the other four ships really dare to break in her route? She wasn't afraid. As Pearl gave an order, the surrounding space vibrated, and streams of light appeared on the surface of the three big ships. Seeing that the three ships of the witch pirates were going to escape, the four Mad Kings couldn't accept this. It was of great significance to take down the Dragon Dance and the Pearl. He ordered, "Chase after them for this prince." And Han Fei raised his rod and rushed back, blasting the god-stunning spike and the heavenly gate at the four Mad Kings. Han Fei grinned and said, "F***CK, who asked you to ruin my plan? The witch pirates are F***King mine. Who do you think you are, the four Mad Kings? You want to compete with me?" The four Mad Kings were furious. At this time, he was in a dilemma. If he was tied down by Han Fei, even if his ship caught up with the Pearl and the Dragon Dance, it would be impossible for him to win the battle. Now, he needed to make a decision. Should he stay and intercept Han Fei, or should he give his four big ships to Han Fei? This was a multiple-choice question. Han Fei was not weak, and the four Mad Kings hadn't fought with Han Fei for a long time. They didn't know the essence of Han Fei's 10 breaths true man, so he was very hesitant. He also wanted to take down the witch pirates. However, he didn't want his big ships to be destroyed. He had brought nearly 100 venerables with him. If he chased them in person, more than half of the venerables might be slaughtered. The four Mad Kings couldn't afford this price. Han Fei was also thinking, "I can't beat the four Mad Kings. I don't need 10 breaths, but after 5 or 6 breaths, I will be exposed." Therefore, whatever plan he had to finish it in a few breaths, and then it was time to run. The four Mad Kings blocked Han Fei's bombardment with their double stings, and the terrifying force rolled up the surrounding space. Han Fei sneered, "Don't think you can get what I can't get." Han Fei waved his hand, and the infinity water rolled up the sea waves and turned into countless water blades, madly cutting the way of the four Mad Kings' 4 big ships. The four mad kings saw this and roared. There were thousands of thorns hanging in the sky, almost covering Han Fei. The thorns stabbed down one after another. Han Fei was surrounded by arrays, and he carried a big shell shield in his hand. It was not an ordinary shell armor, but the shell armor of the White Armor Emperor. Han Fei broke a piece and refined it into a big shield. However, because of his limited strength, it was still a little far from a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. However, its defense power was comparable to a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Clang, 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 hum. At this moment, the three big ships of the witch pirates had already teleported away. As for the four mad kings, they were being held back by Han Fei alone. The infinity water had just been penetrated by the Fish King cannon. Unfortunately, they had lost sight of the Pearl and Dragon Dance. Seeing this, Han Fei issued a mental order and the infinity water returned. Bam, 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 clang, clang, clang. Han Fei retreated while fighting, yelling, "For Mad Kings, be careful when you go out. The Avengers have their eyes on you. You'll never have peace. You're courting death." Bam! Wushuang directly pierced through Han Fei's fist mark and blasted through Han Fei's fist mark with one blow. However, a blue halo flashed, and Han Fei appeared hundreds of kilometers away, resurrected intact. A trace of shock flashed in the eyes of the four Mad Kings. "The great path of time?" Han Fei sneered. "Old madman, I'm leaving you the third time. I'm outside, and I've just arrived home." End of this chapter. Chapter 17:01. How could the crazy four kings allow Han Fei to escape? After all, the crazy four kings had never been in such a passive situation. It had always been the crazy four kings beating others, not others beating them. However, Han Fei had overturned one of his ships and killed one of his subordinates at the Half-King realm right in front of him. This was a big grudge. The two of them broke through the void one after the other. Of course, Han Fei's speed was not as fast as that of a real king. At this moment, the heavenly illusionary divine walking technique, the agility of wind, and other speed techniques have been integrated into his body movements. As soon as Han Fei moved, shadows flickered. At this moment, Han Fei's rushing speed was already his maximum speed. However, Han Fei didn't panic at all. As long as the crazy four kings dared to chase him, he dared to fight back. The two of them fought while running for 1,000,000 kilometers. At this moment, the crazy four kings had discovered Han Fei's weakness. This B***starred could only maintain his power for about 10 seconds. Any longer, and he wouldn't be able to take it. But at the moment when the crazy four kings pierced through Han Fei again, another blue halo flashed. The next moment, the crazy four kings had a bad feeling and immediately broke through the void toward their marauders. But Han Fei's operation was simple. He spent 10 strands of chaotic energy to reverse time and return to his peak state 10 seconds ago. He even used time to travel through the void. Also, it was a distance of 1,000,000 kilometers. Speaking of which, the moment Han Fei reappeared, countless people on the Marauders' pirates exclaimed, "Where are the four kings? Where are the four kings? How did this guy come back? Isn't he being chased by the four kings? Hurry up, launch the Fish King cannon." However, Han Fei glanced around and chose another big ship. He launched a heaven-knocking gate attack decisively. Han Fei only needed to break a space node the size of a needle's eye. The next moment, Han Fei appeared on the big ship with the star teleportation technique. "I'll get off the ship," two peak-level venerables shouted. But at this moment, Han Fei projected the projections of 9 peak-level venerables with the void arrival technique. Pooh! 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 At that moment, all the people on the ship were probably shocked. What the hell is this combat technique? The projection of a king? Could this guy really be a king tier? In a second, Han Fei slaughtered the 9 Supremes. The others had all fled the ship. Of course, this was also the result of Han Fei's deliberate indulgence. Otherwise, as long as he was willing to spend more time, not a single person on this ship would be able to escape. He slaughtered 9 venerables in a row and threw them into Forge the Universe with the Void Lines. Immediately afterward, The big ship suddenly disappeared and was also thrown into Forge the Universe by Han Fei. Meanwhile, the figures of the four crazy kings had just emerged from the void. The mad fourth king shouted, "Little thief, don't run." Han Fei sneered, "I'm sick. That's why I stay to fight you." This time, it only took the king 2 seconds to cross 1,000,000 kilometers. This speed was about a breath faster than the Life Queen and the White Armor Emperor. The two were thousands of kilometers apart, and Han Fei fled again. However, this time, the four crazy kings did not dare to give chase. At the same time, he realized how terrifying the great Tao of time was. However, how many people in the 36 mysterious heavens possessed the time technique? They could be counted on one hand, because everyone in the 36 mysterious heavens knew that the great Tao of time couldn't be used. But no one who could walk to the extreme of the great Tao of time could survive in the end. The four crazy kings stood in midair. In just a few dozen seconds, they had lost a demi-king, 3 peak-level venerables, 6 other venerables, and more than 20 demi-venerables. They had lost 2 big ships. Even so, Han Fei was only at the demi-king realm. The four crazy kings were sure that Han Fei was only at the demi-king realm. Otherwise, if Han Fei was already a demi-king realm master, he wouldn't have been defeated after fighting for only a few seconds. Han Fei, the Avengers, the four crazy kings narrowed their eyes. He had suffered a big loss this time. However, this person's potential and strength were too fantastic. If he became a demi-king realm master, even if his strength only tripled, he would have a place in the chaotic ocean in the future. This gave the four crazy kings a headache. They murmured, "The great Tao of time? How can I kill him? Looks like I can only issue a bounty. I can't be the only marauders encountering such a strong enemy. If we encounter him, we should all encounter him together, lest that kid only takes revenge on us in the future." The four crazy kings immediately shouted, "Turn the rudder and prepare to move through the void. Our target is Martial Emperor City." Han Fei had successfully escaped the four crazy kings' pursuit mainly because he had recognized the power of the great Tao of time. This thing might not be much if it was on old Monster Chu, but if it was on him, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. Han Fei wasn't afraid of the four crazy kings chasing him again. As long as the four crazy kings were willing to part with his marauders, Han Fei could play with them. At most, he would just waste 100 strands of primal chaos energy. Now, in the chaotic ocean, he had seen creatures with large amounts of primal chaos energy more than once. He could absorb it back with just one breath. What was there to be afraid of? Of course, if the four crazy kings didn't chase him, Han Fei didn't need to fight them now. His top priority was not to fight, and it was also not to acknowledge his kin with the Lunar Academy. Han Fei needed to find Een as soon as possible. When the time came, he could bring Een back. What was Een-Er's current strength? How old was she? What was her current state? Even he didn't know. Maybe Een was still very weak and needed time to grow. Therefore, whether he had reached the limit of the half-monarch realm or not, the premise was to find Een. Even if it was to develop feelings for her earlier, it was very necessary. When he was about to leave the savage abyss, Han Fei reached out, and the celestial navigator appeared in his hand. Han Fei's direction was also very clear. He planned to directly pass through the outer sea and find a route to go to the inner sea first. As for the witch pirates, he didn't need to worry about this kind of thing. When he wasn't around, they had survived for tens of thousands of years and developed into one of the top 10 pirate groups. Now, the status of the witch pirates wouldn't change much because of his arrival. Half a day later, when Han Fei followed the direction of the celestial navigator and completely left the savage abyss, the surrounding sea creatures immediately increased exponentially. Among them, the creatures that were common in the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven were basically here. Even rare marine creatures could be found here. Han Fei traveled for tens of thousands of kilometers, and there were as many as 1,000 kinds of marine creatures that appeared in his perception. Among them, Han Fei recognized more than 800 of them. Of course, he didn't recognize the various algae, sea anemones, sea urchins, and so on. Some of the more distinctive creatures were rare. Han Fei had never seen them before. He didn't expect that there would be such magical creatures in the world, for example. The creature information that appeared in Han Fei's eyes now. Name, stellar jellyfish. Introduction, a common marine jellyfish. The stellar jellyfish can absorb the essence of the moon. It is invisible in the daytime and flickers at night, like stars in the ocean. The stellar jellyfish's combat power is average, and its tentacles are poisonous. It is generally not too dangerous. Level 52, quality, regular, spiritual energy greater than 3,270 points. Effect, it can comprehend the power of invisibility. Collectible, flashing star bead, absorbable. Han Fei didn't even want to catch a creature like the stellar jellyfish after seeing it. However, it was indeed beautiful when it floated in the sea and blinked as if there were stars in the ocean. Of course, there were also more dangerous creatures, such as sharks that hunted for prey. At this moment, one of them passed under Han Fei. Information popped up in Han Fei's eyes. Name, blood shadow shark. Introduction, a common shark species. The blood shadow shark is extremely aggressive and sensitive to the smell of blood. When fighting or preying, its body can be drawn as a shadow, and it can quickly approach and hunt. Level 66, quality, rare, spiritual energy greater than 9,327 points. Effect, it can increase the power of blood and chi when eaten. Collectible, teeth, fins, absorbable. There were too many creatures like the blood shadow shark. Moreover, shoals of fish usually appeared in groups. For example, there were hundreds of blood shadow sharks. Han Fei saw that one of the shark's fins was red. It was obviously a mutant blood shadow shark. Upon a closer look, it turned out to be an explorer-level exotic creature, a mutant blood shadow shark. In this sea, among the billions of fish and various creatures, one could easily encounter exotic and explorer-level creatures. Perhaps this was the real ocean. The yin-yang sky and the waterwood sky in the savage abyss were just well-protected places. After tens of thousands of years, they might have forgotten the horrors of the outside world. Han Fei didn't pay too much attention to these marine creatures because he knew that there were people from the outer 13 heavens around. In order not to cause too much trouble, Han Fei was not interested in meeting these people. Anyway, when he returned as a king in the future, he would have plenty of time to meet the forces of the outer 13 heavens. Because the nautical panorama could only give accurate directions in a short period of time, Han Fei released Little Black and Little White after using the nautical panorama. In comparison, Little White's sense of danger and smell should have the effect of seeking luck and avoiding danger in this unfamiliar place that was not within the sea route. However, Han Fei soon found a problem. Little White said, "Dad, there are dangers everywhere. We can't avoid them, Han Fei." Chapter 17:02. Han Fei was confused. Danger was everywhere. What should he do? Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Daughter, then which part is less dangerous?" Little White wagged its tail and circled for a long time before it finally said leisurely, "Dad, I can't feel the spatial distance. I feel that the danger is very close, but also very far away." Han Fei took a deep breath. He seemed to understand why Pearl would rather run to the savage abyss than take the 4 crazy kings to their main route. Once the kings followed the clues, most of the routes would collapse, and it would be difficult to open up a new and safe route. Old Han had told him before that it was impossible to tell the direction by the sun, the moon, and the stars here. Every choice could lead him to head east in the end. At this moment, even Little White couldn't point out the direction clearly. Han Fei couldn't help but smile bitterly. That's right. If Little White can tell the direction clearly and grasp the crisis, then I don't have to spend so much effort to build the nautical panorama. It could be seen that although Little Black and Little White were powerful, they couldn't see through the mystery before they grew up. According to Han Fei's judgment, combined with his experience in the Age of Doom, it seemed that the East had become a forbidden place a long time ago. At least, in Han Fei's view, if one wanted to go to the East to compete for supremacy, he had to be at least an Emperor Realm cultivator. Of course, this was the information Han Fei got during the ritual. According to the old turtle, The place where the yin-yang heaven was located was a barren land. So, in a sense, although the chaotic ocean was much higher level than the yin-yang heaven, there seemed to be only a little more kings here. Were there any emperors? At least, he didn't find any in the memory of the middle-level venerable. However, according to the legend of the martial emperor's city, it seemed that the martial emperor's city could suppress the entire chaotic ocean with a venerable emperor. It could be seen that the venerable emperor was the ceiling of the chaotic ocean. It could even be said that the emperor realm was the ceiling of the chaotic ocean. These thoughts quickly emerged in Han Fei's mind. However, Han Fei had to find a way out now. Han Fei didn't believe that there was no safe area in such a big, chaotic ocean. If there was no such place, how did the people of the 36 mysterious heavens cultivate and grow? Therefore, Han Fei believed that there were too many unknowns in the chaotic ocean that hadn't been explored yet. As a result, people needed to find a relatively safe route to travel. The existence of sea routes was not absolutely safe. Otherwise, there would be no pirates. Han Fei didn't set off immediately. Instead, he recalled the memories he had read from the mind of the venerable of the marauders and identified the location of the 13 heavens. However, that person's judgment of the outer realm's 13 heavens was also based on the sea route. Now, he didn't even know where he was. There was no reference at all. Therefore, there was no other way but to use the nautical panorama. Using the navigator was equivalent to opening up a new route. He had to find a reliable route to the place he wanted to go in the chaotic azure sea. In that case, the problem was still finding the way. Standing on the surging sea, Han Fei pondered for a moment and took out the 9-palace ruler of Providence. Buzz, the ruler of the 9 palaces, ruler of fate, moved quickly and landed on the ominous hexagram. Han Fei immediately grinned. If it was just a bad divination, then it wouldn't be a big problem. Buzz! Han Fei immediately used the universal great shift. This time, the teleportation was different from the teleportation in the Savage Abyss. This time, there was no spatial hindrance. So, Han Fei felt a lot more relaxed. While teleporting, Han Fei made a mark in the original place. When Han Fei appeared in the void and looked back, he had only teleported 20,000 kilometers away. The old turtle said, "That's not bad. After all, you haven't learned it for long. Here, it shouldn't be too difficult for you to open up a route with your strength. Otherwise, where do the existing routes come from?" Han Fei said lightly, "Unfortunately, if I open up a route again, I have to connect to other people's routes or a fixed point." Han Fei couldn't help narrowing his eyes. Han Fei quickly drilled into the bottom of the sea. Beneath the seabed was a rather ordinary valley and cave. There were quite a few creatures here. Han Fei could clearly feel that there were no powerful creatures here. Therefore, Han Fei unhurriedly set up a directional teleportation array here. After setting up this directional teleportation array, Han Fei also engraved a 1 next to it, indicating that this was his number 1 teleportation array. After the teleportation arrays were established, they could be connected to each other. For example, the arrangement of the teleportation arrays in the Waterwood Heaven could be said to be densely packed, and the directional teleportation arrays he set up could easily achieve mutual teleportation of about 200,000 kilometers. Han Fei couldn't help grinning. Since I want to establish a route, let's start now. Han Fei teleported in one direction at least 8 or 9 times. During this period, he encountered venerable realm creatures twice. However, when these 2 venerable realm creatures perceived Han Fei, they immediately began to flee. After all, Han Fei didn't hide his strength and was still in the Half-King realm. When Han Fei set up the second directional teleportation array and marked the number, Han Fei reappeared on the sea. The nautical panorama pointed for the second time today. As a result, the next second made Han Fei feel a little uncomfortable. This time, the direction of the nautical panorama deviated by about 30 degrees from the direction he had just teleported. In this vast sea, even a deviation of 3 degrees was a huge deviation, let alone a deviation of 30 degrees. This meant that Han Fei had to adjust his direction immediately. So, for the second time, Han Fei deviated by more than 20 degrees again. This made Han Fei a little speechless. Fortunately, he had the nautical panorama. Otherwise, who knew where he would appear? After 3 times, Han Fei didn't encounter any powerful creatures in the zigzag route. However, Han Fei still hunted a venerable realm crab. Oh, to be precise, it was not a hunt, but a counterattack. Because just now, Han Fei simulated his realm to the beginner venerable realm in order to use himself as bait to catch those venerable realm sea demons that were preparing to sneak attack and hunt him. In the 3 times that the nautical panorama pointed at, Han Fei estimated that his actual distance was only about 800,000 kilometers away from the savage abyss. And in these 3 teleportations, he should have moved less than 500,000 kilometers. Han Fei took out the marauder ship that he had robbed. After taking out the hull, Han Fei directly dropped the anchor. From today on, he would only move the nautical panorama when it could be used. Otherwise, he wouldn't leave again. The phantoms of mountains and rivers appeared, and Old Yuan, Xiaosei, and Nian appeared on the big ship together. As soon as Nian came out, she asked, "Brother, I just went in for a while. Have the bad guys been beaten away by you?" The old turtle couldn't help but roll his eyes. Can't this little girl see the situation clearly? It's obvious that Han Fei has run away. Xiaosei didn't want to hurt Nian, so he wouldn't tell her. Han Fei said cheekily, "Of course. How can a mere bad guy be my opponent? Nian, what do you want to eat?" "Hot pot." Han Fei grinned. "Then let's eat hot pot." While Han Fei was cooking hot pot, the old turtle said, "This sea area should be very large, right?" Han Fei nodded slightly. "A huge sea area that can accommodate the 36 Xiantian realm. The mermaids and countless sea demons can't be small. Not to mention anything else. I'm afraid it must be hundreds of millions of kilometers. F***CK isn't too big?" When evaluating the size of the sea area, even Han Fei himself was a little stunned. Hundreds of millions of kilometers? Although in the sky, full of stars, this size might not be large. But how could mortals understand the concept of size? The old turtle said, "It's not a good idea to expand like this. We haven't even entered the sea area that separates the inner and outer domains of the chaotic vast sea. It may be more difficult there." Han Fei said, "I know, but I need to know which day is the closest to me." However, the old turtle said, "In fact, you don't have to guess. Neither your nautical panorama nor the ruler of destiny can help you judge. Why don't you find a ship near the savage abyss and the 13 heavens of the outer domain? At that time, you just need to follow them as a shadow. Then you'll be in the 13 heavens of the outer domain." While Han Fei's eyes widened. "Oh damn, Old Yuan, that's great." Han Fei frowned. It was really a waste of time to open up a route by himself. The nautical panorama could only be used 3 times a day. According to the deviation of the route in the chaotic vast sea, in fact, it would be good if he could travel 500,000 kilometers a day. At this speed, he might not be able to cross the outer sea and reach the inner sea in half a year. The next day, Han Fei immediately changed his strategy and calculated with the 9-palace ruler of destiny. It was still an ominous hexagram. For the appearance of this hexagram, Han Fei acquiesced that he was safe. This time, the nautical panorama deviated greatly, because Han Fei wanted to take him to the nearest ship in the 13 heavens of the outer domain. So, when the nautical panorama pointed for the first time, Han Fei traveled 300,000 kilometers all the way. But after 300,000 kilometers, Han Fei calculated and found that the deviation of the route was as much as 38 degrees. This made Han Fei smile bitterly. It seemed that the shorter the distance he moved, the more accurate the route would be. The second time, Han Fei traveled another 200,000 kilometers. The third time, Han Fei still traveled 200,000 kilometers. Since then, the nautical panorama had been used up, and Han Fei happened to see the shadow of a big ship at the end of his vision. And the big ship didn't move. But at this moment, Han Fei suddenly discovered that the demon purification pot shook. Chapter 17:03. Han Fei looked at his wrist suspiciously. only to find that the demon purification pot was trembling slightly and flashing. Calabash actively sensing, "Is this little vine?" The old turtle also noticed something was wrong and asked what happened. Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth. Nothing. The ship Han Fei saw was blue and white, with gem-like light refracting on it. Han Fei was about to search for it when he heard the old turtle say, "Something is wrong. Their hull is not moving. It seems to be pulled by some kind of force." Han Fei got a little closer and then looked again, only to find that the ship seemed to have stopped next to an island. Yes, Han Fei found an island there. On the island, there was also a high tower. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "An island?" It seems that the people of this immortal palace are quite lucky. They even encountered an island on the way. But when Han Fei looked at the bottom of the sea, he was horrified, because he found that there were thousands of broken ship wreckages everywhere, which had long been ruined. However, all kinds of fish were still able to come and go endlessly there, and there wasn't much danger. He was cautious and didn't go there rashly. From about 30,000 kilometers away, Han Fei used the Gemini divine technique and went over to see what was going on with his black mist body. The appearance of the boat-burying pit was absolutely not without reason. Once, when he was in the level 1 fishery, a boat-burying pit appeared because of the mantis shrimp. But this place was different from the level 1 fishery. This was the chaotic ocean. Therefore, the problem he faced here was by no means as simple as that in the level 1 fishery. However, when Han Fei was only 1,000 kilometers away from the island, he scanned it many times with his perception, but he didn't find anyone on that ship lowering the anchor. This was strange. The big ships here were absolutely solid because they had to face the impact of the creatures in the endless ocean, and the anchors were also covered with sophisticated gravity arrays. When the anchors were lowered, the anchors were as heavy as mountains, so that the hull could stay in the chaotic ocean. However, that ship clearly didn't lower the anchor, but why did it stop? According to the waterline, there shouldn't be much problem with the hull. Han Fei didn't figure it out, so he got closer to take a look. On the ice and snow, on the wind snow, the sovereigns and half-sovereigns in thick fur all had ugly expressions on their faces. He saw a powerhouse at the peak of the venerable realm on the ship, so he should be the captain of the ship. This person was holding a supreme-grade divine weapon in his hand, and his face was extremely gloomy. Everyone was staring at the peak stage venerable. The man gently loosened his grip and threw the supreme-grade divine weapon in his hand into the sea. Han Fei was dumbfounded. What's going on? A supreme-grade divine weapon was thrown away, just like that? Were all the people in the outside world so extravagant and wasteful? If you don't want it, you can give it to me. However, at the moment when the divine weapon was about to fall to the bottom of the sea, a claw appeared out of nowhere and gently hooked the divine weapon, causing it to disappear. It was as if it had been sucked into the island. Han Fei saw that everyone on this ship seemed to be nervous. After over 10 breaths of time, the aura of the peak exalted realm expert fluctuated, and he said in an icy cold voice, "It's useless. The amount of offerings isn't enough." Sacrifice? Han Fei was confused. What are the people on this boat offering? However, cries of surprise erupted from his ship. "Hiss," someone said, "an ultra-quality divine weapon isn't enough? Does it need our snowstorm?" Silence. The peak stage venerable turned around and shouted, "Don't talk about the sea of greed. Think about it again. Apart from the snow ship, what else do we have that is worth offering?" Han Fei frowned. The sea of greed? Based on what this person said, it seemed like they were offering sacrifices to this sea. Just now, it was an ultra-quality divine weapon. Even such a divine weapon wasn't enough for the sacrifice. Then apart from the sea-quelling bizarre treasures, only their big ships were worthy of sacrifice. There is nothing better than a supreme-grade divine weapon that a venerable realm expert could produce. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the sunken ships in the water and couldn't help but sigh. It turned out that these ships didn't sink naturally, but were sacrificed. But why did they have to sacrifice? What would happen if they didn't sacrifice? Just when Han Fei was thinking about this question, he suddenly saw 2 rays of light split open on the island. and the rays of light fell directly on the place where Han Fei was. The old turtle shouted, "Not good. Something is wrong with that island." Han Fei was about to use Gemini fusion. Obviously, his black fog body should have been discovered by something. And at this moment, Han Fei only heard a voice in his mind. Humans pass by. You must leave precious resources. Otherwise, you will never escape from greed. Han Fei sneered. F*CKU. Gemini fusion. Han Fei directly teleported to 30,000 kilometers away. Even if there was a treasure like the little vine here, Han Fei still chose to retreat for the time being. After all, he knew nothing about this place. Besides, he had already arrived next to the island, but he didn't find anything wrong with the island. Not only did he not find it, but even the old turtle didn't find it. However, the old turtle said, "The surrounding space is messed up." Han Fei took a step and moved 1,000 kilometers with one step, intending to escape backward. However, as soon as he took this step, Han Fei experienced the feeling of moving 10,000 kilometers with one step. However, these 10,000 miles were not closing in on the periphery of the island. Instead, they were closing in on the island itself. There was space flowing around him. Han Fei thought that he had a good understanding of space. At least, the heavenly void divine walking technique could break through the void. However, Han Fei flew another 1,000 kilometers to the island. At this time, the powerhouse at the peak level of the Venerable on the Snow Wind looked at Han Fei and happened to meet Han Fei's eyes. But fortunately, the two were still far away from each other. Han Fei had enough time to conceal his strength. Han Fei thought to himself, "It's impossible to survive in this sea area if my strength is too low. If my strength is as strong as that peak-level Venerable, the other party will always be wary of me. In this case, it seems that the advanced Venerable is more suitable." Han Fei secretly activated the God-deceiving treasure technique and simulated his strength to the realm of the advanced Venerable, which was a small realm away from the peak-level Venerable. In this way, the other party wouldn't be afraid of him. Of course, Han Fei didn't need to go to that ship immediately at this moment. This was because he was also restricted by this sea region. Something wanted him to sacrifice something precious as a sacrifice. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, can you find anything on that island?" Old Yuan said, "I can't perceive it. With my current soul power, I can probably tell that there is a relatively powerful existence there. However, his soul is resisting. With my remnant soul, it's not worth fighting him head-on." Strong? How strong? Is it another king? Han Fei had now realized the power of the chaotic ocean. But no matter how strong it was, a king shouldn't be born casually. Han Fei thought to himself, "The nautical panorama, the 3 chances for today have been used up. Now it's not the time for me to take action." At this moment, Han Fei was not particularly flustered. He seemed to have nothing on him. Even if he really had to sacrifice something, he wouldn't leave much behind. At this moment, Han Fei looked at the snow wind. According to his memory, this should be a big ship from the ice and snow sky in the outer 13 heavens. Han Fei wasn't sure. Was this the route of the ice and snow sky? If it was their route, why did it come to this sea of greed? So, Han Fei asked straightforwardly, "Fellow Taoists from the ice and snow sky, I'm Han Fei from the 9 Palaces Heaven. Unfortunately, I got separated from the fleet because I was chasing Tao-seeking fish. May I ask where this is?" The peak-level Venerable was surprised. 9 Palaces Heaven? The 13 heavens of the inner 13 heavens also came to explore the abnormality of the savage abyss. Han Fei said, "I just came here to explore. Unexpectedly, I got lost in this sea and couldn't escape." The peak-level Venerable was puzzled. 9 Palaces Heaven, haven't you heard of the Sea of Greed? Speaking of which, this matter was caused by the 13 heavens of the inner 13 heavens. He shook his head and said, "Well, I really don't know about that. I've never been to the 13 heavens of the outer 13 heavens, so I'm not very familiar with the affairs of the outer 13 heavens." "I've never been to the 13 heavens of the outer 13 heavens?" The man was shocked. It seemed that he was a top heavenly talent from the 13 heavens of the inner 13 heavens. It was often said that people from the 13 heavens of the inner 13 heavens, especially the heavenly talents, rarely came to the outer 13 heavens. Because the environment in the inner 13 heavens was better, the resources were richer, and there were more ways to gain experience. Why would they come to the relatively barren outer 13 heavens? He didn't know if the venerable from the ice and snow heaven believed him, but he just replied, "Fellow cultivator from the 9 palaces heaven, this is the Sea of Greed. It said that there used to be a king here, but he was later suppressed by the Grand Pure One and the Wuji Double Palace. However, the Grand Pure One and the Wuji Double Palace failed to kill this king, so the king forcibly detained humans and demanded resources." After hearing this, Han Fei was stunned. "Is there such a king?" Han Fei asked. "What if there's nothing to give?" The middle-aged man said, "Then there may be a risk of death." As they spoke, Han Fei had been constantly approaching this island and the snow ship. In addition to the peak-level venerable, other venerables also discovered Han Fei. Someone was surprised. "Master Lu, who is this person?" Lu Ran said lightly. He said he's from the 9 palaces heaven, but his identity can't be confirmed. However, this person should have accidentally fallen into the Sea of Greed. Otherwise, no one would be stupid enough to come here. Chapter 1704. The Venerable on the snow ship didn't invite Han Fei to board it. In a chaotic, vast sea, anything could happen as long as it wasn't at home. Even if they believed that Han Fei was a lost man, the snow wind couldn't help Han Fei at all. Besides, this middle-aged man was suspicious of the 9 palace heaven, which had sealed the sky for tens of thousands of years. Even in the inner sea, it was extremely difficult to see people from the 9 palace heaven. Han Fei said that he was from a 9 palace heaven, which was a problem. When Han Fei approached, Lu Ran found that Han Fei was actually an advanced venerable. This realm could be said to be very strong. Those who came to the outer sea to gain experience at this realm were probably trying to break through to the peak stage of the venerable realm. And none of the 13 heavens in the inner sea were simple, especially the 9 palace heaven, with its amazing prediction ability. How could it fall into the Sea of Greed? When they approached the island again, suddenly, Han Fei saw a huge super pincer stretching out from the void, trying to clamp the people of the Snow Palace. At that moment, Lu Ran shouted, "Hurry up, everyone get off the ship. The Sea of Greed is taking the initiative to attack." When he saw the tentacle, Han Fei narrowed his eyes and asked in his heart, "Old Yuan, that tentacle should be from that island, right? It looks like a big pincer of a crab. However, compared to the length of the island, this big pincer is too small." The void-long pincer seemed to clamp the snow ship very gently and then dragged it back to the island. As the saying goes, the skilled are bold. Han Fei simply scanned with his perception. However, his perception was blocked 200 kilometers away from the island. There seemed to be a barrier there. Although Lu Ran looked extremely gloomy, he still led the more than 60 people on the Snow Palace to gather. Lu Ran cupped his hands to Han Fei. "Fellow cultivator Han, whether you are actively or passively sacrificing yourself in the Sea of Greed, you can only leave after making a sacrifice. Of course, the sacrificial object had to be acknowledged first. I can't help you. Now, the snow ship has been passively sacrificed, but I still have to lead the people back. Goodbye." Han Fei frowned slightly. "Can you still go back without a ship?" In the chaotic azure sea, the so-called route was a route connected by many spatial nodes. As for those ships, they were not ordinary ships either. Instead, they were meticulously built ships that could move between different spaces. It was like the directional teleportation array that Han Fei set up. If Han Fei let someone pass and gave that person a token, that person could pass with the token. The so-called sea route was also slowly developed using this relatively clumsy method. A single teleportation of a ship could cover a distance of 500,000 to 1 million kilometers. Even kings needed 2 to 3 breaths of time. Exalted experts might get lost if they tried to swim all the way. In fact, most of the routes were discovered by those who had lost their way. Some people were lucky enough to find a way to survive, so they opened up a sea route. However, the majority of them perished in the chaotic Azure Sea. It could be said that in the chaotic Azure Sea, every year, every day, there would be people getting lost. Lu Ran didn't help Han Fei because he couldn't protect himself. Without the ship, it would be difficult for him to find his way back. Of course, there were many of them, and they even had a peak stage venerable one. This power was very powerful. Therefore, Lu Ran didn't panic. In response to Han Fei's question, Lu Ran said lightly, "Have a try." Although the chaotic Azure Sea is terrifying, it's not impossible for people to get lost. By the way, as long as you offer something valuable enough, the Sea of Greed will let you go. With that, Lu Ran led the crowd away, not intending to help Han Fei at all. And Han Fei didn't panic too much. Looking at so many sunken ships, Han Fei guessed that maybe the one on the island had a strange hobby of collecting. This one preferred ships, and he had a marauder pirate ship anyway. If he couldn't, he could just abandon the marauder pirate ship. However, what Han Fei cared about was not a mere pirate ship, but the abnormal movement of the demon purification pot. Before, Han Fei had wondered how many small vines the demon purification pot had. 3 small vines didn't seem to be the limit of the demon purification pot. After all, after getting along with it for so long, Han Fei felt that the deduction ability of the 3 small vines was only at the level of venerable divine quality. Few of them could reach the king level, and some of the abilities shown by the demon purification pot were obviously more than that. Therefore, Han Fei believed that there were other small vines in the demon purification pot. At this time, the 9-Palace Destiny Ruler and the Nautical Panorama had both been used up. Since Han Fei couldn't get out, he planned to wait for another day. At least, the result calculated by the 9-Palace Destiny Ruler today was a bad hexagram. For Han Fei, this hexagram was just an ordinary one. Han Fei didn't care about it. An hour later, the same sentence sounded in Han Fei's ears again. When a human race passes by, you must leave precious resources. Otherwise, you will never escape from the Sea of Greed. When he heard this sentence, Han Fei pretended not to hear it and still sat cross-legged, waiting for the day to pass. And there was no movement on the island. Another 2 hours passed, and the sound rang out again like an alarm clock. Han Fei still ignored it. However, at the moment when Han Fei ignored it, he saw that the space began to flow, and a giant pincer stretched out of the void, trying to grab Han Fei directly. At this time, no one else saw Han Fei, and Han Fei didn't need to maintain his image of a weak person. In an instant, Han Fei's strength soared to the level of a half-king. With the power of the Great Path, the sacrificing punch rushed out, which was also attached with a gravity array. Bam! 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 As if realizing the power of Han Fei's blow, the void overlapped, trying to restrict Han Fei with a spatial technique. Han Fei stepped out and moved the stars, shouting, "Forbidden technique here!" As soon as he shouted, the void collapsed, and the sacrificing punch broke out of the void and continued to blast at the giant pincer. Boom! Gotcha! Inevitably, the tentacle of the giant pincer cut Han Fei's punch mark. As for the giant pincer, half of its pincer had been destroyed. Seeing this scene, Han Fei couldn't help but sneer. That's it. I thought it was really a king. It seems that the opponent's strength is not much stronger than mine. Of course, Han Fei knew that his strength couldn't last long. Besides, today was not a suitable day for fighting. Therefore, after this punch, Han Fei sat cross-legged on the spot, not exploring the mystery, nor trying to find a way to leave. Therefore, every 2 hours, Han Fei could hear exactly the same words, which were asking him to leave some resources for himself. The next day, in Forge the Universe, the Black Fog, holding the 9-Palace Destiny Ruler, calculated today's luck. When Han Fei saw the word Great Misfortune written on it, his pupils constricted slightly. It seemed that it was still quite dangerous. However, fortunately, it was still a Great Misfortune hexagram, not a desperate situation hexagram. Otherwise, even if Han Fei was fully prepared, he might not dare to really fight it. And at this time, the sentence sounded in Han Fei's ears again. When the human race passes by, you must leave precious resources. Otherwise, you will never be able to escape from your greed. The content was like a repeater. Han Fei suddenly stood up and scolded with a smile. I can't escape from the sea of greed, can I? Fine, I won't run. Today I'll take a look and see just what kind of toy you are. How dare you play tricks in front of me? Han Fei activated the closed distance technique, and the world's end is close. However, Han Fei didn't cross the distance of only 1,000 kilometers. The space was twisted, and Han Fei only took 2 or 3 more steps than before. Han Fei sneered, and the nautical panorama began to point. With a thought from Han Fei's figure broke the void again, drilled into the void, and then out of the void. In the chaotic space turbulence, he found a way to pass through. Knock on the gate of heaven. Han Fei grabbed the embroidery needle and punched a hole in the 200-kilometer barrier outside the island. Seeing that the hole was about to be repaired in an instant, Han Fei used the dipper technique and appeared in the barrier. As soon as Han Fei appeared, he shouted, "Who's playing tricks? Let's have a chat. If you want the things I left behind, you have to have the ability to take them." Han Fei suddenly raised his wrist, only to find that the demon purification pot was heating up and stinging his nerves. Han Fei's eyes immediately became fiery. Is the fourth vine finally going to appear? Han Fei scanned with his perception and found that the size of this island was only more than 500 kilometers. It might be a little wider, but it was only 600 kilometers, which was not very big. On the island, there was a hexagonal ancient tower, 7 stories high, surrounded by chains. Regardless of anything else, Han Fei first sneaked to the top of the island. When he saw the ancient tower, Han Fei thought of the demon subduing tower. However, although this ancient tower was somewhat similar to the demon subduing tower, it was not the demon subduing tower, because the top of the tower was empty, and there was an orange-yellow square stone hanging on it. Han Fei wondered, where is it? With its pincers. I guess it's a crab. Why don't I see that crab? Han Fei was very puzzled. He had searched several times, even inside the rocks. However, after looking for a long time, he didn't see anything special here. Han Fei was about to go to the tower to see what was going on, when the old turtle suddenly said, Han Fei, take a look at this island. What's wrong with it? Han Fei wondered. What's wrong with this island? It's just a bit dark. Well, the shape is a bit weird. The part of it above the sea is wider than the part underwater. Hiss! Suddenly, Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. The old turtle's words reminded him. When he took a closer look, Han Fei couldn't help but think of a relatively common creature he had seen before, the stone spirit crab. The stone spirit crab's body was black and looked like a piece of stone. And this island, if he looked at its texture carefully and looked at it from a third person's perspective, it seemed to be a crab that had retracted itself. Chapter 17:05. Han Fei's eyelids twitched a few times. Standing outside the island, he stared at the huge island and looked left and right. At this moment, fish were swimming around the island in the seawater. Those creatures probably didn't know that they were living under the body of a super behemoth. Han Fei had never seen such a huge crab in his life. Except for the Cloud Sea Divine tree and the Blood Sea Divine wood, this giant crab was the biggest creature Han Fei had ever seen. Han Fei approached it calmly, pretending that he was observing the ancient tower on the island. The crab island didn't do anything. However, when Han Fei landed on the island, information popped up in his head. Name, King Crab. Dying. Introduction, King Crab, a remnant of an ancient behemoth. The king crab has been a behemoth for generations, hoping to improve its bloodline and pass it on as the king crab. The king crab had a gentle personality and was generally friendly to all living beings. The king crab is extremely strong, but its body is heavy, which is the drawback of evolution and the reason why they try to improve their bloodline. The ultimate king crab often can't bear the burden of its body. Level 90 Quality Ancient Mutant Level C Expansion Path Space contains chaotic energy, 1024 battle techniques, space scissors, space turbulence, space barrier, space overlap, space folding, food algae, shellfish, collectible, insect limbs, insect cores, insect eyes, insect armor, insect essence, absorbable. Note, the king crab is on the verge of death. When Han Fei saw the information of the Ba king crab, he didn't feel good. It turned out that this was a dying king. Also, it was a gentle creature. However, what made Han Fei dumbfounded was that since the gentle creatures were friendly to all creatures, why did they attack human beings? Why did it ask human beings to offer resources? Han Fei tried to detect the orange stone on the tower with his perception. However, the tower was sealed, and Han Fei still couldn't see it. Han Fei paused for a moment. Seeing that the king crab didn't attack him, he jumped back and appeared at the bottom of the sea. At this moment, Han Fei thought for a moment, grabbed the needle, and pointed at the king crab. Don't hide. You are the island, and the island is you. You're just a relatively large crab. It was easy to invite me, not so easy to trap me. If we don't get to the bottom of this, I'm not leaving. Buzz, at that moment, the space turbulence erupted. The void around Han Fei began to collapse. With a fierce look in his eyes, Han Fei immediately shouted, "Seal this place." The space was slightly stabilized, and Han Fei had already blasted out with a heaven-knocking gate. The reason why Han Fei dared to risk his life today was that this was a dying king. The king was dying, and Han Fei felt that maybe he could still fight. No matter how bad it was, he would at least give it a try. As long as he could obtain the little vine, he would not hesitate even if he had to exhaust all of his primal chaos aura. Moreover, Ba Wang also had 1,000 strands of chaotic energy. If he ran out of chaotic energy, he could still absorb King Ba's chaotic energy. Clang, Han Fei attacked with a heaven-knocking gate. In the next moment, Han Fei saw a giant pincer, a super giant pincer more than 200 kilometers long, blocking his blow. Han Fei was stunned. How could such a behemoth be so fast? When Han Fei felt the enormous power of the great way of space attached to the pincer, he immediately understood. It turned out that this Ba king crab also knew that it couldn't move so fast, so it exerted the great way of space on itself and moved its pincer over. Because he was a king, and this great way was acting on him, it was like his body's instinct. Therefore, it was not affected by Han Fei's seal. With a thought in Han Fei's mind, the infinity water rushed out. Within 1,000 kilometers, waves surged in an instant, and the blade purgatory was rapidly taking shape. Although the infinity water was not a sea-quelling bizarre treasure, to be honest, it was almost the same. Using blade purgatory, he attacked indiscriminately from all angles without any blind spots. Its power was certainly not to be underestimated. Of course, for creatures like crabs, the bombardment effect might not be ideal. However, it was definitely useful. A king was strong, but not strong enough to ignore such a massive attack. After all, Han Fei had dealt with the White Armor Emperor. Perhaps Han Fei's indiscriminate attack really annoyed the Ba king crab. The void trembled, the bottom of the sea shook, and within 500 kilometers of the Ba king crab, a spatial storm instantly blew up. F***CK. A spatial storm was no joke. This level of power was even stronger than the void storm outside the Divine Sun's body in the waterwood heaven. Outside the body of the Divine Sun's blood sea divine wood, there was a void storm, a storm formed by interweaving space cracks. And this spatial storm was really stirring up space. Only the heavens knew where this disturbance would bring the people to. It was safe to say that this was a kind of powerful power that even a king dared not touch easily. The Great Way of Space was no less terrifying than the Great Way of Time. Han Fei immediately grabbed the nautical panorama. At the moment when the void storm blew up, Han Fei directly rushed at the Ba king crab. As long as he caught the Ba king crab, he wouldn't be involved in the spatial storm. After all, it couldn't send him into the infinite void. However, when a spatial storm was generated, the space overlapped. As a result, Han Fei's route was changing every second. At this moment, unless time was stopped, Han Fei couldn't pass through the spatial storm even with a nautical panorama. At this moment, Han Fei finally realized why he had such a bad divination today. It turned out that the bad news was here. The Ba King crab made him realize the horror of the Great Way of Space. Before, Han Fei thought that the Great Way of Space was just the utilization of space. The closed distance technique was one of the utilization methods. However, seeing the spatial storm, Han Fei was almost certain that few people in the entire chaotic ocean dared to attack the Ba King crab. Without the marvelous technique of time stop, it was impossible for them to capture the Ba King crab. However, other people didn't have marvelous techniques, but Han Fei did. The supreme yin-yang wheel could ignore space and appear next to the enemy, suppressing and strangling the enemy. At this moment, Han Fei decisively gave up the guidance of the nautical panorama and roared, "Supreme yin-yang wheel!" The Ba King crab raised its eyes, because the yin-yang image somehow appeared above its head. At this moment, the Ba King crab finally said something that didn't sound like a recorder. "Are you the master of the yin-yang palace?" Chilla. Crack, 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 the supreme yin-yang wheel was entangled on the Ba King crab's enormous shell. With Han Fei's current combat ability, even though the Ba King crab shell was as hard as a sea-quelling bizarre treasure, it might not be able to resist it. At this moment, Han Fei shouted in his heart, "Master Calabash, absorb, absorb, absorb." The demon purification pot never hesitated in absorbing power. At this moment, the Ba King crab felt that some chaotic energy was disappearing from its body. Han Fei, on the other hand, was quite excited. This was a king. Even a dying king was still a king. More than 1,000 strands of chaotic energy were definitely not a joke. 1 second passed. 2 seconds passed. 3 seconds passed. By the 6th second, Han Fei had already shattered a large area of the Ba King crab's shell. The demon purification pot also absorbed dozens of strands of chaotic energy. When Han Fei was about to sneak into the Ba King crab's body, his power ran out, and the supreme yin-yang pattern collapsed. However, Han Fei wasn't panicked at all. He was going to reverse time and do it again, waiting to exhaust the Ba King crab to death. However, the Ba King crab's shell was quickly recovering. Its voice came into Han Fei's head. "Human, stop fighting, stop fighting. I admit defeat." Han Fei. He would be lying to say that he wasn't shocked. This was a F***King. Why did it admit defeat? That was the biggest joke in the world. An emperor like Old Yuan was only a remnant soul and had no choice but to acknowledge him as its master. But this Ba King crab, a king, admitted defeat just like that? How could it become a king with such a personality? However, Han Fei did stop. When he stopped, Han Fei still put one hand on the Ba King crab, fearing that it would run away with the power of space. Then he would suffer a loss. The old turtle said, "Don't worry, it can't run away. It has been sealed by the tower on its body." The power of this tower made it impossible for him to teleport quickly and directly. Also, it's too big to move, or it would have run away a long time ago. Han Fei was amused. That was a good reason. Hearing Old Yuan's explanation, Han Fei simply stood on the Ba King crab body and said proudly, "I know you're a king. But so what? You're too weak." The Ba King crab's body was heaving as if it were suffering from asthma. It said, "Because I'm about to die. Otherwise, I would have run away a long time ago." Well, Han Fei was speechless. Was the king crab serious about escaping as if it was a matter of course? However, Han Fei was still quite surprised. Did this guy tell him that it was about to die? After all, what he saw and what the guy told him were two completely different concepts. Han Fei didn't know whether he should praise it for being simple or stupid. Han Fei snorted. "All the creatures in the world will die eventually. What does it have to do with me that you're going to die?" But what the Ba King crab said next stunned Han Fei. It said, "I fought side by side with Jiang Linxian." Do you know Jiang Linxian? Chapter 1706. Who? Han Fei couldn't have felt better. This Ba King crab even knew his mother? Han Fei said, "When did you fight side by side?" The Ba King crab said, "That's a long time ago. I watched the yin-yang heavens, the waterwood heavens, the golden crow heavens, and the 9 palace heavens work together to open the desolate abyss. I even helped them. I helped them open the desolate abyss." You opened the desolate abyss? Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Go on. You should at least tell me more clearly so that I can know if you're lying to me. The Ba King crab's body slowly sank. Finally, with a rumble, it smashed into the seabed, causing the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. Who? I'm too tired. Fighting is too tiring. The Ba King crab heaved a long sigh, like an old man with a hunched back. He couldn't take it anymore after he stood up and moved around. The Ba King crab said slowly, that was tens of thousands of years ago. Come to think of it, it must have been 80,000 years ago. All of this had to be explained from a mystic realm. There was a mysterious secret realm in a place in the far east of the chaotic ocean. Some people want to use this secret realm to expand their seas. Some people want to use this secret realm to split open the sky. Some people want to use this secret realm to search for secrets. And some people want to bypass this secret realm and leave the chaotic azure sea. Old Ba seemed to be lost in memories. It said slowly, at that time, it was already the second time we went to that secret realm. The second time, all the people who went there were kings. Not only are there human kings, but there are also the merfolk race, the 100-demon race, the giant beast race, the underwater human race. Almost all the kings of the chaotic azure sea have gone. Han Fei's heart did a flip. This secret realm should be the unparalleled secret realm that old Han mentioned, which gave great opportunities and created 108 kings of the human race at one time. In that case, the Ba King crab didn't seem to be lying. It continued. At that time, Jiang Linxian, as the master of the Yin Yang Palace, was unparalleled in treasure hunting. In that secret realm, she discovered a giant door that led to an unknown place. However, discovering it was just discovering it. No one could open that door. Later on, the 9 temple masters appealed to everyone to help him with their luck. In the end, he didn't disappoint everyone's help. With the 9 palaces heaven divination technique, he created an unparalleled force formation and pushed open a crack in the door. Hiss! Han Fei felt like he was listening to a story. Was this the legend of his parents' generation? At that time, the two of them were already kings. Old Han actually had such an ability? Gathering the karmic luck of the human race. One amazing ability. So, they were already having an affair at that time? The Crab King continued. At that time, as soon as the door was opened, divine light shone. Everyone could see that the door was like a garden of immortals. We saw a spirit plant with a long sword, an ancient saber, a flame spark, an ice bead, and many other things growing on it. If we had worked together to obtain the treasure, we might have been able to let it go. However, everyone was fighting over it. Afterwards, the 9 temple masters and Jiang Linxian actually dug up the tree. Pooh! Han Fei almost vomited a mouthful of blood. He was truly shocked by the last sentence. However, when Han Fei came back to himself, he couldn't help but remark, "Wonderful! If it were me, I would have dug up the tree too when I saw the treasures growing on the tree." The Crab King agreed. That's right. That's exactly what I thought at that time. The master of the Golden Crow Palace and the master of the Waterwood Palace shared the same idea. We took action as soon as possible. Everyone was tempted by interests. Then, you can imagine the result. The 9 temples, the Yin Yang Palace, the Golden Crow Palace, the Waterwood Palace, and the other immortal palaces all fought each other and turned the place into a sea of corpses. Han Fei nodded. That tree must have been something extraordinary. All the kings must have had their eyes on it. Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. Was that tree the demon purification pot? Han Fei couldn't help but ask, what did that tree look like? The Crab King paused for a moment. Well, it was quite big. Its leaves were long and green, and it was hundreds of meters tall. There were 100 things hanging on it. Han Fei was surprised. Were they all dug up by the Yin Yang Palace and the 9 Temples Palace? The Crab King said, some of them. Because I'm master of the Tao of Space, I brought back some of them. That's why I was hunted by the Grand Pure Palace and the Wuji Palace. The Crab King said unhurriedly. At first, the Yin Yang Palace and the Waterwood Palace were too weak to resist, so they chose to avoid the savage abyss. I want to go there too. Unfortunately, I was stopped by the Lord of Dreams who arrived later, and I couldn't leave. The Lord of Dreams? The Crab King said, "The master of the dream-weaving heaven, known as the Lord of Dreams." Han Fei thought to himself, that's not right. Han Fei's first reaction was that old Han was practicing the big dream heavenly book. That seemed to be more in line with the dream-weaving heaven setting. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "So, you allied with Jiang Linxian and the others? You're a sea beast. Will the human race accept you?" The Crab King said, "I'm just a behemoth, not a sea demon. We, the giant beasts, are two different things from the sea monsters. We aspire to be the overlords of the sea. Besides, the demons and mermaids didn't get along well with each other. The undersea humans and human beings also interacted, and the divine sect once allied with human beings. Similarly, some human rebels joined the sea demons." Han Fei felt that his head was about to explode. The Crab King said, "So, you have to believe me. I've helped the yin-yang heaven. Nobody can open the double space in the desolate abyss without my space Tao, right?" The Crab King said, "So, you have to believe that I helped the yin-yang heaven." "Wait," Han Fei asked quickly. "What did you say? What double space?" The Crab King said, "Did I say that?" Han Fei said, "You did." The Crab King was stunned for a while. "Oh, it means that the desolate abyss doesn't contain one space, but three spaces." "Pooh," Han Fei said gloomily. "Is it a double space or a triple space? Crab, don't try to fool me. Tell me the truth if you want to live." The Crab King said, "It's a double space or a triple space. The first space in the desolate abyss is the most common desolate land, where the spiritual energy is sparse. As long as you can cross the entrance of the desolate abyss, you can get there. The other space is where the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven are. Although it's a desolate land, it's still habitable, because from the chaotic ocean, there will be power drawn into the second space. Of course, most of the power is drawn into the third space." Han Fei's heart did a flip. The power drawn by the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven was only a small part. The Crab King said, "I don't know where the third space is. At that time, we all agreed that that space is very dangerous. Even a king can't survive there. It's hard to find the danger from the outside world without opening a space channel. More than one person in the chaotic ocean has been to the desolate abyss. Either they went to the wrong place and could come back, or they went to the wrong place and couldn't come back. Well, I don't think many of them can come back." Han Fei was shocked. When he came out, there was a path leading to the desolate abyss. At that time, he almost ran away. Fortunately, he used the 9-palace destiny ruler at that time, or he would have gone to the third space. A mere savage abyss actually contained 3 layers of space. It's so terrifying that a group of kings can live and die. Han Fei had another question in his mind. He asked in confusion, "Have you ever thought of murdering them and taking the treasures for yourself?" The king said, "Why? They had brought 2 profound heavens with them. That's billions of lives. How can I kill them? Besides, I'm close to the master of the 9-palace. We're good friends. He saved me." Han Fei, if he hadn't asked, he wouldn't have known that this crab had a friendship with old Han. Of course, Han Fei pretended to be surprised and asked, "How did you make friends with humans?" The king said, "Little Shushu would give me toys. Sometimes a big boat, sometimes a big bottle, sometimes a big fish, sometimes a demonic plant. We've been friends since we were very young. At that time, I hadn't become a king yet, and little Shushu hadn't become a venerable yet." Little Shushu, Han Fei frowned. He didn't know what old Han's reaction would be if he told him that name. I wonder if he can still keep a calm face? Han Fei couldn't have felt better. Did he have to call the Ba King Crab Uncle Ba? However, Han Fei certainly couldn't say that now. He didn't care about his relationship with old Han and his mother. 70 to 80,000 years had passed. Who knew what had become of them? So, Han Fei simply said casually, "Are you telling me this so that I won't kill you?" The king crab was silent for a moment and suddenly said, "Do you want my treasures?" Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said, "So what? So what if I don't?" The king crab said, "I've been under too much pressure over the years. The Wuji Palace suppressed me with the ultimate magnetic seal and I'm about to die. If you want something of mine, then help me be reborn, and sign an equal contract with my reborn body. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. It didn't matter. The contract could be terminated. In the future, when the king crab's reincarnation reached a higher level, it would be the same to terminate the contract. Han Fei asked, "Why me?" The king crab heaved a gloomy sigh. Was the thing you used just now the myriad manifestation? Han Fei was suddenly stunned. The myriad manifestation hadn't been built yet at that time, had it? The king crab said, "It's a human sacred weapon that little Shushu planned to build when he was still a venerable. I didn't expect that would be built after all these years. Can I have a look?" For some reason, Han Fei felt sad. Okay. Chapter 1707. Han Fei didn't believe the Ba King Crab story. He trusted the information read by the demon purification pot more. Han Fei stretched out his hand, and the nautical panorama appeared in his hand. It had 5 rotating axles inside and outside, which looked very high-tech and extraordinary. When Old Ba looked at the nautical panorama with his super huge eyes, he couldn't help but exclaim, "It seems that you're the one who carries the luck of the yin-yang heaven. Since the nautical panorama has appeared, you've been waiting for a day. Is the ruler of Providence also with you?" Han Fei didn't deny it. This big crab knew about the 9-palace ruler of Providence. Han Fei shrugged. "Here it is." Han Fei stretched out his hand, and the 9-palace ruler of Providence also appeared. Seeing this thing, Old Ba seemed to have infinite mixed feelings. Staring at these two things for a long time, Old Ba murmured, "Little Shushu, are you still alive?" Han Fei nodded. "Yes." Old Ba couldn't help but ask, "What's your relationship with him?" Han Fei said, "My dad." Old Ba couldn't help but look at Han Fei for a long time. "Oh, you don't look like him." Han Fei was speechless and thought, "What do you mean? What do you mean? Do you mean I'm not as handsome as old Han?" Han Fei said, "What about you? Why are you here? It's so close to the savage abyss. Aren't you afraid of being discovered?" Old Ba said leisurely, "Even if they find me, so what? I'll walk the path of space. If someone dares to attack me, I will collapse the void myself. At that time, no one will be able to get anything I have. It'll be the same, even if all the kings of the 36 immortal palaces come." Han Fei had to admit that if this Ba King Crab really wanted to kill himself, he would be in a very dangerous situation now. The death of a king would cause the void to collapse, and he would probably be sucked into the void vortex again and fall into the endless void. Thinking about it carefully, he was really a little scared now. At this time, Han Fei raised his question. "You just said that the 4 immortal palaces united. The yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven escaped, but why didn't the 9-palace heaven and the golden crow heaven escape? And after so many years, these 2 immortal palaces are still in the inner sea." Old Ba said, "The golden crow heaven has rebelled. The current golden crow heaven was in cahoots with the supreme purity palace. Meanwhile, 9 palaces heaven had sealed the heavens and was attacked by everyone. Most of the floating islands were destroyed, and the remaining main islands were set up with 72 absolute formations of the 9 palaces. Whoever went would die. Moreover, the people of 9 palaces heaven were skilled in the path of algebra, and they hid among the 36 mysterious heavens. Who would dare to attack Jiugong Tian? They won't hesitate to take revenge." Han Fei's eyes narrowed slightly. Has the Golden Crow heaven rebelled? Presumably, after the Golden Crow Palace Master left, the Golden Crow sky could not withstand the pressure and was subdued by someone else. And Jiugong Tian seemed to be very powerful. Through the Tao of algebra, he actually sealed the heavens and didn't come out. However, under such circumstances, the number of people from the 9 palace heavens was definitely very few. Han Fei said again, "Old Ba, do you know which immortal palaces were the ones that attacked the yin-yang sky?" The Crab Monarch said, "That's a lot, because with the Grand Pure One and the limitless Tao Palace in front, even if the other immortal palaces did not want to become enemies with the yin-yang 9 palaces, they had to weigh their own weight. Therefore, there were many who participated in the war. But when it comes to real enemies, there were 7 immortal palaces which played a leading role." "Oh, 7 immortal palaces?" Han Fei was a little surprised. He had thought that only the Grand Pure One and the limitless Tao Palace had forced the other immortal palaces to attack the yin-yang sky. But now it seemed that there were more enemies than he had imagined. The Crab Monarch said the main enemies of the Grand Pure One, the limitless Tao Palace, the Dream Weaver Palace, the Five Elements Palace, the Wild Corpse Palace, the Apotheosis Palace, and the Medicine King Palace. Among the other immortal palaces, the Chaos Immortal Palace is neither good nor bad. The dragon subduing sky is caught in the internal strife of the Azure Dragon Palace. The Glaze Palace, the Immeasurable Tao Palace, the Sword God, and the Grand Mystery Tao Palace have allied with each other and are not controlled by the Grand Pure One. As for the outer 13 heavens, except for the Avalon of Five Elements and the Wild Corpse Palace, the others are relatively neutral. Generally speaking, whoever is stronger has the right to speak. Han Fei heard this. Therefore, except for the Wild Corpse Palace and the Avalon of Five Elements, the outer 13 heavens were basically fence-sitters. As for the inner sea, almost half of the forces were led by the Grand Pure One and the limitless Tao Palace. The Glass Sky's forces were independent, and their strength could not be underestimated. The Grand Pure One probably would not suppress them. After roughly understanding the relationship between the enemy and himself, Han Fei became more certain. He had not become a king yet, so it was hard to say anything. When he became a king, everything would have to be said. Seeing that Han Fei was deep in thought, the Crab Monarch said, "Although you are very strong now, I found that your strength can only last for a few seconds, which is far from enough. The Grand Pure One and the limitless Tao Palace are more powerful than you think. Your strength is now similar to that of the weakest Wind Lord in the outer 13 heavens." Wind Lord, the Crab Monarch said, the master of the Wind Cutter Sky Palace, known as the Wind Lord. His strength is average, but his speed is very fast. Han Fei nodded slightly. After all, I'm only half a king. Before I become stronger, I won't cause too much trouble. By the way, old Ba, you're going to die. What exactly happened? Is it because of the ultimate magnetic seal of the limitless Tao Palace? The Crab Monarch heaved a gloomy sigh. It's a long story, not only because of the ultimate magnetic seal, but also because of a weird vine which is absorbing my vitality and strength. Now, my vitality is almost exhausted. Only by rebirth can I be reborn. Weird vine. Han Fei's heart did a flip. A weird vine that could suck a king into such a horrible state? It was definitely the vine from the demon purification pot. Only this thing could be so terrifying. The Crab Monarch said, "Me? This weird vine is in the tower on my back. The old guy from the Grand Pure Palace planted it in my shell armor. The limitless Tao Palace suppressed the tower with the ultimate magnetic seal, making it impossible for me to get rid of it. If I weren't a behemoth, I would have been sucked to death tens of thousands of years ago." Han Fei immediately twitched the corner of his mouth. No wonder the Crab Monarch created a sea of greed. It was probably because it had no other choice. Han Fei said, "I'm going to take the ultimate magnetic seal down." The Crab Monarch hummed, "I can't take it down. It has pierced into my origin sea. Unless I die, I can't take it down. If I take it down, I will die immediately." Han Fei was immediately horrified. So weird. In Han Fei's heart, the old turtle said, "I don't know what the great magnetic seal it mentioned is. But if it's the thing I know, it's the best among the materials for divine weapons. It can change." Han Fei's heart did a flip. But this thing could kill the Crab Monarch. The Crab Monarch said, "Since you are the son of an old friend, you came at the right time. Over the years, I've exhausted all my resources and don't have anything good for you. But I do have some collections. Let me show you around." Han Fei. The king would show him around the treasure house. Han Fei, who was used to robbing, found it a bit strange. The void around him was shaking. Originally, the place that looked like it was filled with shipwrecks suddenly changed, and many complete ships of various colors appeared in the void. Half of these boats were about the same quality as the one that the ice-snow heavenly sacrificed just now. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. There were a total of 1,206 big boats around, neatly arranged. Judging from these big boats, there were all kinds of symbols. Han Fei thought to himself, I'm afraid that all the forces that have appeared in the chaotic ocean, including the top 10 pirate groups, have been robbed by the King Ba. However, Han Fei keenly noticed that some of these big boats seemed to be in good condition, but they seemed to be missing something. As for what they were missing, Han Fei didn't know, but he felt that something was missing. In addition to these big boats, there were a lot of ultra-quality divine weapons, high-quality divine weapons, and so on around the King Ba. These ultra-quality divine weapons could be said to be all kinds of weapons. Han Fei had never seen some of them before. At a rough glance, there were 8,212 of them. It must be noted that it took time to build an ultra-quality divine weapon. And among these weapons, there was even a sea-quelling bizarre treasure, a spear. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. If Zhang Xuanyu saw this thing, he would drool on the ground. And as far as Han Fei knew, if the essence of these ultra-quality divine weapons were really extracted and reforged, at least 10 sea-quelling bizarre treasures could be made. Unfortunately, the cost of recasting them was too high. Anyway, Han Fei didn't have the resources to burn. Speaking of sea-quelling bizarre treasures, Han Fei didn't lack them either. The King Ba said excitedly, I'll give you my favorite collection. Come to the bottom of the sea. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. A collection? Isn't that enough? Han Fei wasn't bragging. With these resources, if he traded them in the Martial Emperor City, he would instantly become one of the top tycoons in the chaotic ocean. When Han Fei landed on the seabed, he saw that the King Ba slowly propped up its body with its two giant pincers. The void twisted, and under King Ba, a colorful black ship that was covered in a blue light appeared in Han Fei's sight. It looked like a patchwork ship. Hiss! Han Fei immediately exclaimed, This is a ship made of the parts of the ships outside? The King Ba said in surprise, You saw through it? Han Fei thought to himself, I found something wrong just now. It turns out that something has been dismantled on every ship and assembled into this thing. Chapter 1708. Han Fei carefully looked at the big ship that was pieced together by the King of Ba. The ship was about 300 meters long, which was almost negligible compared to Ba Wang's size. Han Fei didn't expect that Ba Wang had such a hobby, and he even played with Lego. Maybe this was one of Ba Wang's pastimes. When Han Fei scanned them with his senses, he was shocked to find that these materials were probably the best materials on every big ship. That dragon bone was actually forged from the bones of a king. Could it be that Ba Wang had robbed a king before? Even every piece of wood on the deck was pieced together. Even the lowest level was the bone of a venerable. The sail was made of a whole piece of fish skin. The fish skin glittered with colorful light. If he guessed right, it was the mermaid skin of the mermaids. Oh my God. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. Ba Wang had built a supermain ship in the Pioneer Sea level. Even a king's attack couldn't penetrate such a ship. If he could set up a raise and modify it, it would be a perfect main ship. It wouldn't be much different from the king's ships of the top 10 pirate groups. Seeing that Han Fei was shocked, Ba Wang said happily, How about it? Awesome, right? It took me a long time to piece it together. It's the best ship I've ever seen. It's my friend. Han Fei nodded heavily. This ship is indeed extraordinary. Dumb. The King Ba was so happy that it couldn't help but raise its paw and pound it on the seabed. For Han Fei, it was smashing. But for King Ba, it might be a happy expression of dancing and tapping his fingers. Ba Wang was even spitting bubbles. I knew it. Little Shu Shu said that he would build the most powerful ship for me as a pirate ship. Look, he broke his promise, but I made it myself. I gave it to his son, Han Fei. Han Fei had a complicated look on his face. Damn, he was almost touched by a behemoth. Han Fei smiled. Can't you be reborn? By then, this ship will still be yours. King Ba moved his pincers. It won't be able to hold me. All right, let's sign the equality contract. Han Fei asked in surprise. Don't you need me to sign a contract with your reincarnation? King Ba mumbled. No need. I just need a molt. Get rid of my great Tao. Get rid of my power. Get rid of my shell. Get rid of my memories. Han Fei was surprised. Crab molting. This way of rebirth is truly refreshing. Han Fei didn't know whether he was lucky or unlucky to go out to sea this time. Was it a coincidence or was it luck? He had thought that he was in danger, but he ran into King Ba instead. Signing an equality contract was simple. Then, King Ba swallowed his saliva and pushed his patchwork ship to Han Fei. The Ba King said, "You have to quickly put these things away. Once I die, there will definitely be kings who will guess it. Although it might take several months for them to come here, they will eventually be able to find them." Han Fei slightly nodded. Got it. However, at this moment, Han Fei's heart did a flip. All the remaining resources in Forge the Universe began to be consumed crazily. After all, Han Fei didn't go out for nothing during this period of time. He even looted 20 venerable level Sun Moon shells from the Raiders' pirates. There were also a lot of resources in it. Forge the Universe used to only have a radius of 30 kilometers. Now it was time to expand it. However, 30 kilometers was still too small for King Ba's enormous body. In fact, Han Fei only thought of expanding Forge the Universe because of King Ba's size. If he really wanted to take King Ba away. In fact, Han Fei could still use the sea quelling painting. One had to know how significant the corpse of a king was. It was very likely to create another king. If the King Ba's body was used to make divine weapons or sea-quelling bizarre treasures, how many would he have to make? Therefore, Han Fei couldn't keep King Ba's body. He wouldn't let anyone take advantage of it. Rumble, King Ba's molting process lasted for half a day. Its body trembled, and its soul was struggling. It seemed to be gathering power to forge an inheritance. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, when King Ba succeeds in molting, immediately seal this place with the turtle shell heaven sealing technique." The old turtle asked in surprise, "Are you afraid that a king will come?" Han Fei looked at the pagoda behind King Ba and said, "I'll have to put away the ultimate magnetic seal in 3 days. What if the king of the Wuji heaven is related to that thing? Then King Ba's location is actually not safe." The old turtle said, "Okay. However, I think that if the Wuji heaven is related to this big seal, it may have come a long time ago. But just in case." Half a day later, King Ba's aura was almost gone. Han Fei saw that the big crab was still trying to straighten its body with its big pincers. He saw that under King Ba's body, a small ball emitting white light slowly floated out. When the white light floated to Han Fei's face. In the end, King Ba's body couldn't stand it anymore and smashed on the seabed with a boom. Turtle shell heaven sealing technique. At this moment, Old Yuan used the turtle shell heaven sealing technique to cover the sky, temporarily isolating the king from the outside world. Han Fei took the glowing ball left by King Ba with both hands and took a closer look, only to see a small crab moving gently in the ball of light. With a thought, Water Luster appeared beside Han Fei. "Master!" Hiss! Water Luster looked at the scene in front of her in shock. The huge super crab really shocked her. What kind of creature was this? How could it be so huge? Han Fei handed Little Ba to Water Luster and said, "Take Little Ba to the sea-quelling painting and wait for it to hatch." Then Han Fei threw out a Sun Moon shell. The Sun Moon shell was full of resources such as spirit awakening fluid and spiritual spring. Han Fei said, "Take good care of it." Water Luster took a breath. "Yes, master." Han Fei didn't talk with Water Luster for long and took her back to Forge the Universe. After a while, Han Fei stored all the big ships and all kinds of weapons and other treasures into Forge the Universe. After that, Han Fei extended the void lines to see if he could still absorb the soul power of King Ba's remnant body. However, Han Fei was surprised to find that King Ba only had more than 3,000 ownerless souls left. The rest of the souls were probably used to shed and be reborn. This was also a way for King Ba to inherit the King Crab's legacy. Only in this way could King Ba become more and more powerful. Except for the soul power that was basically shed, there were only more than 400 strands of chaotic chi left in King Ba's body. The old turtle said he used the chaotic energy to nurture his reborn body. If I were to be reborn, I would also leave my primal chaos aura to my reborn body to the limit. In this way, The reborn body can reach a terrifying level at the very beginning. Han Fei nodded slightly. He wasn't in a hurry to collect the chaotic chi. What he needed to collect was the small vine in the demon purification pot. However, before collecting the small vine, Han Fei still needed to get the so-called ultimate magnetic seal out. On King Ba's huge body, the ultimate magnetic seal that was emitting orange light. At this moment, the luster was constantly dimming. It should be because King Ba had died that this ultimate magnetic seal was no longer working. Han Fei came to the tower. There was an invisible barrier around the tower. Han Fei reached out and hit it, only to find that his whole hand was submerged in it. Han Fei staggered and almost fell. In the invisible barrier, there was a terrifying gravity. The old turtle said, "This is the power of that stone. Why don't you try to walk in and have a look first?" Only then did Han Fei know how much gravity the King Ba was under. The ultimate magnetic seal was specially used to suppress it, and what he felt might only be the power that came with the stone. When Han Fei stood in the gravitational field, his entire body trembled. Suddenly, his body sank and his knees bent slightly. It felt like he was walking down the steps with a jade bridge, but fortunately, he could still bear this force. The force acting on him might be equivalent to 10,000 times the gravity. The old turtle said, "Fortunately, this should be a gravity magnetic seal. It's a rare thing. However, obviously, this is a magnetic seal without removing impurities. It's of a very high level. But now, I'm afraid you can only use it to smash people." Han Fei wondered, "Didn't you say that this might be a material for a divine weapon?" The old turtle said, "This material is indeed a divine weapon material, but you can't forge it now. A material of this level can't be calcined with spiritual fire at all. Even with the sun essence fire, it may take thousands of years to calcine it every day. Do you have that time to calcine this thing?" Han Fei bared his teeth. "No, let's talk about how to burn it." The old turtle said, "We can only use a spiritual fire. This kind of spiritual fire is about the same level as the blue sea smoothie. Flames of that level may be able to forge this thing." Needless to say, there was also a requirement for smithing skills. In short, this is a material for forging divine weapons, but it's definitely not something you can use now. Han Fei couldn't help but shrug. "What a pity. I'll just keep it for now." Han Fei felt that the gravity was slowly decreasing. The power of the gravity magnetic seal must have weakened after the death of the Ba King. When Han Fei walked to the bottom of the tower, he felt that the gravity increased again. After all, he was too close. Han Fei was about to reach the top of the tower in one step. But this step only brought him to the height of the 7th floor. The gravity of this damn thing could even compress space. He almost embarrassed himself. Han Fei climbed to the top of the tower and looked at the big stone that was as thick as a stone monument, less than 3 meters high. Han Fei spread his arms and grabbed the gravity magnetic seal, ready to try to lift it. Bam! Han Fei exerted his strength and lifted the gravity magnetic seal, and the tower collapsed. Han Fei and the gravity magnetic seal fell on the shell of the Ba King at the same time. Han Fei's heart thumped, and he flashed across the air, avoiding the gravity magnetic seal. Thud! Rolling ripples smashed in all directions. Han Fei was lost for words. "I'm afraid that only kings can move this thing, right?" Chapter 1709. Han Fei finally knew why the king of the Wuji heaven threw this gravitational force over to suppress Old Ba. Indeed, it was because this thing was too heavy. Ordinary kings couldn't use it at all. Besides, the king of the Wuji heaven also tampered with this gravitational force so that the gravity of the stone covered the entire crab shell. At this moment, the stone was lifted by Han Fei, and after a series of means, the ancient tower naturally collapsed. But now, Han Fei had no time to care about this gravitational force, because in the ruins, a small vine was trembling slightly, and between Han Fei's eyebrows, the demon purification pot came out by itself. Han Fei immediately held his breath. The old turtle was stunned. This was the first time he had seen the demon purification pot leave Han Fei's body. The demon purification pot was already very scary. But who would have thought that there was still a vine in the demon purification pot? Once this vine was attached to the body, what would the demon purification pot become? Han Fei had seen such a scene several times. The demon purification pot was rotating and trembling, and the small vine seemed to be frozen in the void, ready to connect with the demon purification pot. After only a few seconds, Han Fei's demon purification pot stabilized, and the small vine flew over and hung on the demon purification pot. Han Fei wanted to see if there were any changes in the demon purification pot, but a shocking scene happened. However, a shocking scene happened. When the four vines converged, a main vine appeared, and on the main vine, a bud slowly stretched out. Han Fei saw that the bud was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a while, it became a pale yellow flower. Han Fei's eyelids twitched wildly. Will the demon purification pot bloom again? But it was not over yet. The flower of the demon purification pot slowly bloomed. After it bloomed, a fruit appeared. Gudu, Han Fei's eyes widened. A fruit? That's awesome. How could the fruit growing on the demon purification pot be an ordinary fruit? But after growing for about 2 minutes, Han Fei found that the nail-sized thing didn't seem to be a fruit, but a jade slip. Yes, Han Fei was right. It was a jade slip that was growing. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Old Yuan, is mine considered a worldly spiritual treasure?" The old turtle was so shocked that he couldn't speak. It was one thing for a demon plant to grow fruits, but a jade slip? Who the hell had seen this before? The old turtle was dumbfounded. I really don't know. Han Fei just asked old Yuan a question symbolically. This sort of thing was probably a very rare occurrence in the entire vast sea. However, this must have something to do with the arcane realm that Ba Wang mentioned. After all, I and the others dug out a demonic plant full of all kinds of strange treasures from that secret realm. Han Fei even suspected that that thing was the demon purification pot. Also, Han Fei felt that when he had the chance in the future, he would definitely go to the Grand Purity Palace again. After about 300 breaths of time, the jade slip gradually took shape. Gotcha! Han Fei was shocked. He thought that the jade slip was broken. In the end, he saw that the root of the jade slip was withering, and the jade slip directly fell to the ground. Han Fei immediately stretched out his hand and picked it up on the demon purification pot. Where the flower had just bloomed, a small section of branches and leaves withered and fell naturally. So far, no other anomalies appeared. The demon purification pot finally welcomed its fourth vine. Then, the demon purification pot disappeared into the center of Han Fei's eyebrows again. Han Fei, on the other hand, had no time to check what had happened to the demon purification pot. His eyes fell on a jade slip. When his soul power soaked in, information popped up. Bloodline devouring, divine technique. Introduction. A special bloodline enhancement method born by nature. You can improve your life level by devouring the bloodlines of different races. The ability to devour bloodlines has nothing to do with one's level, but only the bloodline. If you encounter a special bloodline, you can devour it without worrying about any side effects. Deduction. Unable to deduce note. After devouring the bloodlines of other races, a fetus of life will be condensed in the abdomen. When the fetus is formed, the bloodline will be replaced and a stronger life level will be created. Divine technique? After reading this, Han Fei was dumbfounded on the spot. He fell into a state of sluggishness. Earlier, the old turtle told him that the life level of human beings was not high. Among the thousands of races in the vast sea, they could only be ranked in the middle. At that time, he also reminded him to find a way to improve his life level when he reached the 36 profound heavens. Now, it was great. The dermic formulation had grown out on its own. Moreover, the effect was ridiculously awesome. At this moment, the old turtle asked, "What jade slip is this?" Han Fei didn't speak. After a pause, he looked at the demon purification pot. Han Fei found that there were no new functions in the demon purification pot. However, this bloodline devouring, known as a divine technique, was extremely powerful. Han Fei immediately responded, "Old Yuan, have you ever seen a divine technique?" Old Yuan was speechless. "Are you talking about divine techniques? Are they just called divine techniques?" Before Han Fei spoke, Old Yuan said, "To be honest, if it's just self-titled, my turtle shell sky sealing technique and your Gemini divine technique can both be called divine techniques. But in the legends, the real divine techniques are the super great techniques that have the power to go against the heavens. In the age of gods, only the gods could master divine techniques." Yes. Han Fei just responded indifferently. Han Fei felt that what he was using now was probably a peerless great technique that only the gods could have. Han Fei couldn't wait to start practicing this great technique now. However, Old Yuan's turtle shell sky sealing technique had a time limit. Old Ba's body was still here, and he had to deal with the funeral affairs first. As for the bloodline devouring, when he left this sea area, he would slowly devour it. Anyway, all he had now was the essence blood of the Azure Dragon, and he could get some of Old Ba's essence blood. As for other creatures, Han Fei hadn't eaten the Tao-seeking fish yet. It could even be said that this entire ocean was the source of power for him to improve his life level. Therefore, although Han Fei was very anxious in his heart, however, his reason still told him that he had to stabilize and improve his life level first. There was still a long way to go. The old turtle asked tentatively, "What's wrong? Don't tell me that you've grown a divine spirit technique." Han Fei said lightly, "You'll know when I start cultivating." With that, Han Fei rushed to the gravitational force, reached out, touched it, and put it into Forge the Universe. At this moment, Forge the Universe was still expanding. Han Fei planned to expand Forge the Universe bigger this time. After all, he was in a different place now. Forge the Universe was originally only 30 kilometers in radius, which was too small. Withdrawing the gravitational force, Han Fei let the demon purification pot begin to absorb the remaining chaotic gas in Old Ba's body. 3 days later, in Forge the Universe, Han Fei was slowly recovering from the modification of the hull. The old turtle said, "Are you done? The sky sealing technique is about to be unsealed." In front of Han Fei, there was a large pure black ship. This ship was naturally the one that Old Ba had left for him, the strongest flagship, because this main ship was pieced together by disassembling the essence of thousands of large ships. Although the parts were gorgeous, the overall connection was still not perfect. Besides, a colorful ship didn't suit the style of the Avenger. What if he went out in a colorful Avenger? As long as he took a step forward, the Avenger would immediately become the enemy of the entire chaotic Azure Sea. Because the ships of the 36 mysterious heavens and the top 10 pirate teams could basically be found on the Avenger. Who else would they fight? And in order to carry out this transformation, Han Fei spent more than a month in Forge the Universe. Even so, it was just barely completed. After all, it took a lot of resources to transform a ship, although the ship that Old Ba collected was already very good in itself. However, the quality of the materials was uneven. Han Fei happened to know how to refine weapons, and in Forge the Universe, there happened to be a lot of materials that couldn't be used. If all of them were used on one ship, how powerful would the Avenger be? Han Fei didn't know. However, such a modification, in addition to material resources, also consumed a lot of energy. When Forge the Universe was expanded to a radius of 100 kilometers, after another round of crazy transformation, the spiritual stones, spiritual energy, and other resources on him were almost consumed, and the hull was only about 2/3 transformed. The ship array hadn't been studied yet, and the energy cannon was still being studied. It seemed that Han Fei was now the first step to becoming a mature pirate. He still needed a perfect pirate ship. The old turtle roared, and Han Fei immediately opened Forge the Universe. Han Fei said, "Okay, there's nothing left here. Open it. It's time for us to leave." With a thought, the nautical panorama appeared in Han Fei's hand. At the moment when the turtle shell heaven sealing technique was unsealed, there was a rumble above the sky. Cracks appeared, rainbows pierced the sky, and a rain of blood poured down. At that moment, near the savage abyss, countless people looked up at the sky. Someone exclaimed, "What's going on? Is this the fall of a king?" Someone was shocked. This level of celestial phenomenon, which king has fallen? Someone sighed. Is there a battle between kings nearby? Meanwhile, far away in the inner district, in a magnificent palace, a stern-looking man suddenly opened his eyes. The ultimate magnetism field has disappeared? King Ba has fallen? Hum. As soon as this person's voice fell, his figure disappeared into the void, and no one knew where he went. And Han Fei, at the moment when the celestial phenomenon broke out, the nautical panorama in his hand began to turn, directly pointing the nautical panorama to a large ship of the 13 heavens nearest him. Should he go to the 13 heavens or not? It didn't matter. Han Fei just needed to find a place to settle down first. Now that he had a divine skill, of course, he had to find a safe place to cultivate in seclusion for a while. Of course, he couldn't pretend to be Jiugong Tian anymore. Jiugong Tian had been sealed for tens of thousands of years. Before, the man on the snow just didn't want to fight with him, so he pretended to face him normally. Chapter 17:10. As long as there was a route, the big ships of the major immortal palaces that could teleport moved very fast. The reason why it took 5 days was that after each void teleportation, they needed to draw energy from the void and wait for the next void teleportation. This was the first time that Han Fei had come to the territory of the third major immortal palace other than the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven. When Han Fei appeared in the outside world, the big ship was flying above the sky. High in the sky, there was a floating island about 1,000 kilometers wide. On this floating island, there was a special berth for large ships, as well as a port for small ships. Han Fei's perception swept the sea surface and found that within tens of thousands of kilometers here, there was a safe place. The layout here was a bit similar to the layout of the Yin-Yang Heaven. The only difference was that the super big ship of the Venerable Realm and the ordinary fishing boat appeared on the same island. This meant that the island Han Fei and the others were on now might be equivalent to a teleportation point or a courier station. After the big ship was docked, Han Fei had already left quietly. He simulated his aura to that of a law enforcer and walked on this floating island. Han Fei took a few steps and found that there was a clear lack of ordinary fishermen on this island. It seemed that it was just a courier station and a place for basic material trading. Countless people set up stalls and opened shops here. There were strong people and weak people here. However, in general, there weren't many weak people. Otherwise, Han Fei wouldn't have simulated a law enforcer and appeared here. After a while, Han Fei met an advanced explorer in the crowd who was drinking tea in a restaurant. Yes, no matter what realm one was in, the strong wouldn't be exempt from the secular world. From a long distance away, Han Fei clasped the void lines in the air and directly probed into this person's soul. In fact, on the big ship of the Thunderfire Heaven, Han Fei wanted to catch a person and look at that person's memory. However, the soul power of a semi-venerable would resist. Besides, there were many venerables on the ship, so it was easy to be suspected. But after getting off the ship and the crowd dispersed, no one could find out what Han Fei had done. The advanced explorer, under Han Fei's control, couldn't do anything at all. Han Fei quickly scanned this person's memory with his soul. After a while, Han Fei quietly erased the memory of this person being manipulated. The old tortoise said, "Frequently searching other people's memories isn't a good thing." Han Fei smiled casually. "It doesn't matter. I haven't seen much." From the man's memory, Han Fei saw the general layout of the Thunderfire Sky. The place he was at was known as the Lightning Fire Bazaar. It was the place with the most transactions in the entire Lightning Fire Sky's coastal waters. In the 13 outer realms, the immortal palaces were no secret to the masses. There were also huge cities, villages, and towns here, just that there were a few more markets. The huge city of Thunderfire Sky was called Thunder City. It was simple and clear. The Thunderfire Immortal Palace's palace master is an incomparably powerful blacksmith. Even though this fellow was a king, he would make an appearance in Thunder City every 10 years or so to display his dignity as a king through equipment refinement. There were very few blacksmiths in the 36 profound heavens. So, Thunder City was also called the hometown of weapon refiners. All the blacksmiths in the 13 outer realms and the 13 inner realms, if they wanted to grow into stronger blacksmiths, they couldn't do without Thunder City. Speaking of which, the main city of Thunder City was much larger than the main city of Enyang Heaven, at least twice as large. This Thunder City also had 36 towns under its jurisdiction. Each town had several villages under its jurisdiction. In terms of structure, this Thunder City was actually similar to Enyang Heaven. Of course, Han Fei could understand. After all, from the beginning, the 36 profound heavens were all together, so every family must be like this. As for places like Shimu Heaven, it might be an exception. After all, it was a world controlled by plant creatures. How could it be the same as the human world? Perhaps a long time ago, Shuemu Heaven was also created by human beings. However, after coming to the Savage Abyss, it gradually adapted to the plant creatures' preferences. The refining skills of Thunder City were quite good, but Han Fei didn't intend to stay here for long. However, since he was already here, he had to learn some of the forging techniques of Thunderfire Sky. On the big ship, he heard that the heaven-asking thunder summoning technique and Thunder God's Hammer seemed to be relatively rare refining techniques. This was the first time Han Fei had come to the outside world. Therefore, he also hoped to compare his combat skills, refining techniques, and arrays with the outside world in all aspects, learning from each other and quickly adapting to the outside world, so that Han Fei could better improve his strength. After thinking for a while, Han Fei decided to go to Thunder City to have a look. Anyway, from the memory of that person just now, it seemed that if he wanted to go to the inner area, he had to take a boat from Thunder City. As for identity, it didn't matter. He could use his black mist body to sneak onto the boat. As long as he got on the boat, he could cultivate all the way to the inner area. Half a day later, Thunder City, South Island. Han Fei held Nian, Er's hand, and Xiao Sei followed behind him. Old Yuan was temporarily cultivating and forged the universe. So, he didn't come out. When Nian just came out, she exclaimed in shock, "Brother, there are so many people." Han Fei said, "Nian, this is human society. Thunder City, worthy of being a city of refining." Along the way, what they saw most was refining workshops. The place Han Fei was going to was the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion in South Heaven of Thunder City. It was said that it was the top consumer place in South Heaven Island, mainly selling all kinds of divine weapons. Perhaps because it was close to the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion, there were many small workshops nearby. All kinds of clanking sounds rang out incessantly. On the roadside, people often shouted, "Brother, the Peng Brothers Refining Workshop is of high quality and low price. Our weapons are comparable to those of the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion." Someone shouted, "Authentic, high-quality pills of the Medicine King Heaven. You won't lose anything if you buy them." Perhaps because refining and alchemy were inseparable and there were a large number of body practitioners in the Thunderfire Heaven, all kinds of pills were sold very well. After walking for a long time, Han Fei found that in Thunder City, there were many foreign people. When Han Fei came to the Thunder City, he discovered this. The clothes of each of the 36 immortal palaces were different, which might also be the customs of the 36 immortal palaces. In this South Heaven Island Bazaar alone, Han Fei saw more than 10 kinds of foreign clothes. This meant that at least people from the other 10 immortal palaces came and went from the Thunderfire Heaven. Crunch! Nian looked around curiously as she chewed on her chips. "Brother, why is that person banging on the door so loudly?" Han Fei smiled. "That's refining." "Oh, big brother, I saw something delicious. I saw someone put the fish into the big stove." Han Fei smiled. "That's grilled fish. It tastes mediocre. It's not as delicious as the potato chips in your hand." "Oh, brother, their clothes are so strange. One of their arms is always exposed." Han Fei was silent for a while. "It's not their clothes that are strange, but our clothes are very strange. The men of the Thunderfire Heaven habitually exposed one of their arms, as if to show off their muscles. and the women of the thunder, fire, heaven habitually wore long braids. Behind the braids, there was a long pendant. Some of the pendants were sabers, some were daggers, and some were hammers. Would it bother his hair? And the clothes of the people of the other immortal palaces were even more different. Take the only person Han Fei knew, the people of the ice and snow heaven. They wore thick plush clothes, so when they walked in the crowd, they looked particularly conspicuous. For cultivators, wearing clothes was just for their appearance and had nothing to do with whether they were hot or cold. In any case, their own characteristics were the most important. Nian was wearing a blue lace dress made by Han Fei. He himself was wearing a black robe, and so was Xiao Sei. Therefore, Han Fei and the others still turned their heads to look at them. When Han Fei saw a tall quadrangular building made of green crystals, he knew that he had found the place. The 10,000 Treasure Pavilion. Han Fei had already suppressed his strength to the level of a junior venerable. In fact, the people of the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion did business all year round and had seen all kinds of customers. Seeing Han Fei coming over holding Nian Er's hand and then looking behind Han Fei, the shopkeeper immediately knew that Han Fei and this little girl were not simple. They even felt that this little girl might have a great background. "Sir, welcome to the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion of the South Heaven of Thunder City." Han Fei glanced at the man lightly. Obviously, they regarded him and the others as people from other immortal palaces. Han Fei didn't mind this. He was not from the Thunder Fire Heaven anyway. Han Fei grunted and said, "I'm here to see something and sell something." Facing Han Fei's indifferent temperament, the waiter still greeted him with a smile. "May I know what you want to see?" The 10,000 Treasure Pavilion collects all kinds of treasures and will definitely satisfy you. Han Fei said, "Take me around first." "Okay, sir. With your temperament and realm, you can start from the 3rd floor. Please follow me." Of course, this person couldn't tell Han Fei's strength, but at that moment, someone said to him via voice transmission, "Take them to the 3rd floor. I will receive them personally." On the 3rd floor of the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion, as soon as Han Fei came up holding Nian Er's hand, he saw a slightly fat middle-aged man, who immediately cupped his hands to Han Fei and said, "Fellow Taoist, with your strength, the things on the lower 2 floors will not be suitable for a guest. May I know what you want to see, sir? I've already asked my servants to move out some of the treasures of the South Heaven Treasure Pavilion." Han Fei looked at the man, who was a peak-level junior venerable, and he was just a manager of a shop. Sure enough, there were indeed many strong masters in the outside world. Han Fei smiled faintly. "Then let's take a look." 3rd watch. Asking for votes. Smita. End of this chapter. Chapter 17:11. More than half a month later, Han Fei wandered around in the mist on the sea and finally found a big ship of another divine palace. When Han Fei saw the symbol of blue flames on the ship, he took a long sigh of relief. Sure enough, it was more comfortable to use other divine palaces' routes. It took them tens of thousands of years to establish the routes. Did he want to explore and overturn them in a few days or months? It was a bit unrealistic after all. At this moment, the big ship that Han Fei had his eyes on hadn't been activated yet. Usually, big ships wouldn't activate arrays when they were sailing. After all, arrays consumed a lot of resources. The most basic arrays would be activated automatically when the ship was under attack. Therefore, when everything went smoothly, the arrays wouldn't be activated. As for Han Fei, he only needed to simulate a Tao-seeking fish with the chaotic energy 10,000 kilometers away from the ship. As soon as the fish appeared, many experts immediately flew over. Han Fei grinned. "I've been waiting for this chance." A moment later, an advanced venerable showed up, but the Tao-seeking fish had already disappeared. The man mumbled, "Are the Tao-seeking fish so smart nowadays? They're still far away." What he didn't know was that at the moment he appeared, a black shadow had hidden itself on his body. Han Fei boarded the big ship without a sound, as if he had entered an uninhabited place. There were 47 people on the ship, 11 of whom were venerables, and the rest were demi-venerables. Other than them, there were a few advanced explorers and peak-level explorers. It must be an exploration ship of a divine palace that was here to explore the savage abyss. The mission wasn't very important. Han Fei didn't expect to find anything, so there weren't many venerables on the ship. However, even so, the strongest had reached the advanced venerable realm. Han Fei was surprised by something on the ship. Refining could be done on the ship. There were as many as 4 refining cabins. Han Fei was intrigued. What would refining be like in the outside world? In a certain refining room, when a black shadow snuck in, Han Fei saw a junior venerable and 8 demi-venerables watching an intermediate venerable refine weapons. Clang, the man held a silver hammer in his hand. Lightning flashed on his body and covered the silver hammer. As the hammer smashed down, the spirit spring water in the cabin gathered under the hammer, and the hammer smashed out like waves. From the power of the hammer, Han Fei concluded that this middle-level venerable was also a body refiner. However, this person's forging strength was still not enough. It was obvious that this person had not reached the peak of each realm. Of course, it didn't stop him from improving himself. But as his strength grew, he would eventually fade away from the masses. There was almost no hope of him expanding his sea. In the next moment, a series of clanking sounds could be heard. The middle-level Venerable One's arm moved as fast as lightning. He shouted, "Lightning Hammer, transfer the accumulated lightning energy into your meridians. In a single breath, strike 1,000 times, and the force of the strike must fall evenly on the material." Obviously, this middle-level Venerable was teaching, and Han Fei watched with great interest. This person's hammering speed was very fast. This great technique was quite powerful. Although the power of the 1,000 strikes wasn't very strong, it was much weaker than the 100 Battles Hammer. However, the 100 Battles Hammer was more of a combat technique than a refining technique. In essence, it was used for combat. And this lightning hammer, it should be used purely for refining. Therefore, the focus of the 2 combat techniques was different. The man's lightning hammer continued hammering the Martial Highness bone for more than 80 breaths, hammering it tens of thousands of times. The Martial Highness bone grew from the size of a boulder to the size of a fist. Thunder fire. Lightning surged on the middle-level Venerable's hands. When the lightning poured into the venerable bone that had already deteriorated, dozens of other resources that had been prepared turned into liquid and merged into it. But in a moment, a broadsword appeared, on which blue lightning spread. Han Fei's pupils constricted slightly. This person forged an ultra-quality divine weapon so easily. Fortunately, the words of the people next to him made Han Fei breathe a sigh of relief. The beginner Venerable couldn't help but clap his hands. "Old Zhang, you're really good. It only took you more than a month to forge an ultra-quality divine weapon. You can open a custom-made divine weapon shop in the Thunder Fire Heaven in the future." The middle-level Venerable laughed. "The point is that I can't stay idle. Besides, I have to come out to search for some refining materials." With that, the middle-level Venerable looked at the demi-venerables and said, "Have you seen it clearly? In the past month, I mainly used the Lightning Hammer, Thunder Fire Force, Thunder Breaking Strike, and Thunder Connecting Meridian to forge an ultra-quality divine weapon. In our Thunder Fire Heaven, these forging methods aren't considered to be very profound. As long as you become a venerable, you can learn them all. Now, go back and comprehend them." "Yes, Teacher Zhang." Han Fei watched in the dark for a moment. Thunder Fire Heaven? Old Zhang once explained that this was an immortal palace that was famous for its refining techniques. According to Old Han, most of the famous sea-quelling bizarre treasures of the 36 mysterious heavens came from the Thunder Fire Heaven. As the saying went, refining weapons and alchemy made friends all over the world. This was not false at all. Whether it was the 36 mysterious heavens or the top 10 pirate groups, when they encountered refiners or alchemists, they would not directly kill them. After all, those who could refine weapons and alchemy were all talents. But Han Fei was wondering if the Thunder Fire Heaven had a way to refine the gravitational force. However, the gravitational force was originally a treasure in the hands of the Wuji Heaven, but it was used to suppress King Ba. It must be because the king of the Wuji Heaven couldn't find a way to use it. Maybe they had already seen the king of the Thunder Fire Heaven. After the demi-venerables left, the junior venerables said, "Old Zhang, I think you should really think about it. You're extremely talented in the art of artifact forging. Besides, your strength has now reached the peak of the middle-level venerable. Once you break through the advanced venerable realm, you may have a chance to learn the heaven-asking thunder summoning technique. Once you learn this technique, you may have a chance to try refining a sea-quelling bizarre treasure in your life." Old Zhang's face froze, and there was a trace of yearning in his eyes, but he still shook his head with a bitter smile. How can it be so simple? That's a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. The heaven-asking thunder summoning technique is not enough. At that time, you will need different kinds of fire, at least the scorching sun essence fire, and many strange materials. And you will have to practice a hammer technique that is stronger than the lightning hammer. Han Fei heard them clearly. Forging a sea-quelling bizarre treasure? Forging an ultra-quality divine weapon and forging a sea-quelling bizarre treasure were two completely different concepts. There was a reason why there were not many sea-quelling bizarre treasures in the entire 36 mysterious heavens. It was because it was too difficult to forge a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. In the chaotic ocean, only the Thunder Fire Heaven was famous for its refining techniques. Even the people of the Thunder Fire Heaven found it extremely difficult. After listening to the conversation between the two, Han Fei walked around the ship again and then found an empty place that probably belonged to the storeroom. With Han Fei's half-king realm, even if he showed up, no one would be able to find him. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, let's follow the big ship of the Thunder Fire Heaven to the Thunder Fire Heaven first. When we arrive, you can call me. I'll go into seclusion first." The old turtle was a little puzzled. "You don't seem so averse to seclusion now." Han Fei sneered. "Are you kidding me? If you get the bloodline devouring divine art, I'm afraid you can't wait to practice it." In Forge the Universe, Han Fei sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and carefully studied and practiced the bloodline devouring technique. After Han Fei finished reading it thoroughly, he found that practicing this technique would also bring corresponding problems. For example, after his bloodline devoured a new bloodline, his life level would be improved, and his potential would naturally be improved. Then, in the same realm, the limits to be reached would be different. However, Han Fei was now a half-king. In the past, although he had reached the limit of his ability in each realm, it was only relative to the human bloodline. But that was only relative to the human bloodline. Although Han Fei's bloodline was much higher than that of ordinary people, the human bloodline didn't rank particularly high among the clans in the vast ocean. Therefore, if Han Fei swallowed the bloodline of other races, it might lead to the decline of his own realm. This was to make up for the previous shortcomings of his bloodline and avoid the lack of potential. In other words, Han Fei could use this bloodline devouring technique to constantly purify his bloodline. Besides, there was another problem, that was if the bloodline of other races that he swallowed was too much higher than his own, it might lead to mutation of his own bloodline. Would it mutate? And in what direction would it mutate? It depended on the willpower and the strength of the devourer's bloodline. At this moment, Han Fei had the corpse of an azure dragon, but he couldn't determine the level of the dragon bloodline. So, he couldn't take it rashly. This made Han Fei quite speechless. How the hell do I know what level the bloodline of the human race belongs to? Moreover, different people's bloodlines were different. While Han Fei was thinking about this problem, suddenly, the gray misty space of the demon purification pot appeared in Han Fei's mind. Han Fei was surprised to find that a big gray word named 1,000 races in the vast ocean had appeared in the demon purification pot. When he saw these big words, Han Fei knew that the demon purification pot really had a new ability. The 1,000 races in the vast ocean. This might be an opportunity for him to learn more about the thousands of races in the vast ocean. If Han Fei wanted to light up this picture, he needed 100 wisps of chaotic gas. Now, Han Fei's chaotic energy had reached 1,583 strands. Therefore, Han Fei didn't care about a mere 100 wisps. However, for a moment, the old turtle was dumbfounded. What kind of deal did Han Fei make with the little calabash? First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1712. Han Fei waited for more than 3 hours after the 10,000 species genealogy in the sea was opened. 3 hours later, when the 5 big words were lit up. Then, Han Fei saw a message that made him feel uncomfortable. Above the foggy space, the information showed 10,000 species in the sea. 296202223 owner. 5065890 nearby bloodlines. Tao-seeking fish, water swamp, cyan black turtle, ancient azure dragon, time dragon carp, sea white shell, ancient essence shell, king crab, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish recommended bloodlines. Tao-seeking fish, water swamp, cyan black turtle, sea white shell, ancient essence shell, king crab. When he saw this information, Han Fei didn't feel good. Didn't old Yuan say that there were only more than 8 million species in the vast ocean and less than 10 million species? Why did the demon purification pot show nearly 30 million? That was 30 million species of living beings. And he had swallowed the essence blood of the god of war and was ranked more than 5 million species. What a waste of his golden blood. However, at this moment, Han Fei also realized one thing. Old Yuan said that he knew too much about this world, but it was actually just his own wishful thinking. Old Yuan was just warning him with his own experience. Although bloodlines didn't represent combat power, they represented life, potential, and life level. He was ranked more than 5 million species in the sea. Even if he squeezed out his potential to the extreme, he was still ranked more than 5 million. In this world, there might be many creatures who were extremely powerful when they were born, able to crush you from birth. At this moment, Han Fei realized that he was indeed a frog in a well. He thought that he was so powerful that he could kill a king as a half-king. However, at this moment, Han Fei believed that there were definitely many creatures in this world that could kill a king as a half-king. Han Fei took a deep breath. If he hadn't opened the 10,000 species genealogy in the sea today, he wouldn't even know what level he was at. Now, Han Fei knew. Before, Han Fei didn't like the Taishan Sutra, which was ranked more than 5,000. Now, Han Fei had a complicated look. He was afraid that he still had a long way to go. At least, should he break through to the king level? Han Fei began to doubt it. Although he had the bloodline devour divine art, which could make up for the shortcomings of his bloodline, he could use it at any level. However, the effect of the Thunder Tribulation during the Emperor Tribulation would be different. For example, if the top 1 million life levels of the 10,000 races in the vast ocean and the top 10,000 races in the 10,000 races in the vast ocean, could their tribulations be the same? Transcending the tribulation was a way to improve one's bloodline. If he could improve his life level as much as possible before the king's tribulation, would the effect of the tribulation be better? Of course, the first thing he should do now was not to consider the tribulation, but to try devouring the bloodlines of other creatures. Han Fei reached out his hand and drew out a stream of essence blood from the Tao-seeking fish. When the drop of essence blood was swallowed by Han Fei, all the essence blood in his body suddenly began to move crazily. They instantly tore that drop of blood into pieces. At this time, golden blood vessels slowly appeared in Han Fei's dantian. A moment later, a small, illusory fish appeared in his dantian. In just a moment, the little fish was covered by Han Fei's golden blood. In the end, it disappeared without a trace. 10,000 races in the vast ocean. 296202223 in progress. Owner 4865894 nearby bloodlines. Water luster, ancient azure dragon, time dragon carp, royal sea white clam, ancient essence clam, king crab, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish recommended bloodlines. Water luster, royal sea white clam, ancient essence clam, king crab. This time, Han Fei keenly noticed that the option of the cyan tortoise was gone. It meant that after he devoured the bloodline of the Tao-seeking fish, he didn't need to devour the cyan tortoise anymore. The cyan tortoise was old Yuan's Gui Sanqing. The Tao-seeking fish was legendary, but Gui Sanqing might not even have a legendary quality. However, To Han Fei's surprise, his life level had improved a lot. With only one improvement, his ranking had risen by almost 200,000. Immediately, Han Fei realized that the effect of the Bloodline Devour Divine Art on improving the level of Bloodline was very low when devouring creatures of the same level. Even if he devoured a powerful Bloodline, he wouldn't immediately improve to the same level as the creature of that race. Nothing can be accomplished overnight, and the same goes for magic. However, Han Fei had at least grasped one thing, which was that the ranking of legendary creatures in the vast ocean should be around 5 million, and the ranking of human beings was probably more than 10 million. The reason why he was ranked 5 million at the beginning was probably because he had fused with the essence blood of the god of war. At the same time, he had been constantly refining his flesh and blood. Otherwise, his ranking would have been much lower than it was now. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled into a smile. The illusion of mountains and rivers appeared, and Han Fei walked into the sea-quelling painting and appeared on the sea. Water luster suddenly rushed out of the sea. Amidst the waves, the water ball protected the Ba King egg. "Master, why are you here?" Han Fei said casually. "I'm fine. Water luster, give me a drop of your essence blood." Water luster's life belonged to Han Fei, so it didn't care about a drop of essence blood. So, it gave it to Han Fei without hesitation. Han Fei returned to forge the universe. However, Han Fei didn't immediately devour Water Luster's essence blood. Because to devour the essence blood, his body needed to fully adapt to the bloodline that had just been replaced, which would take time. And how long exactly would it take? Han Fei wasn't sure, so he still needed to wait. At least, Han Fei didn't have to worry about not having a bloodline to improve for the time being. With the bloodlines of Water Luster, the Sea Guard White Shell, the White Armor Emperor, and the Ba King, Han Fei estimated that it shouldn't be a problem for him to improve by 1 million. To be precise, on the 27th day, Han Fei felt that he had completely adapted to the devouring this time. Of course, only less than 2 days had passed in the outside world, and Han Fei's personal information also began to change. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 89, Half King, 10,000 species in the vast ocean, 4865894, chaotic energy 1, 483, spiritual power greater than 199,999, perception range greater than 80,000 waves, power greater than 21,201 waves, first spiritual heritage, unknown, second spiritual heritage, unknown, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 78, second spiritual beast, King Sparrow, level 75, main art, void arrival, level 7 of void fishing, king level, divine quality. Among them, the biggest change was the ranking of the 10,000 species in the vast ocean. After devouring the bloodline of the Tao-seeking fish, his soul power didn't seem to have been improved much. His spiritual power seemed to have been improved by less than 800 points, which was right before the 200,000 mark. As for his strength, it was slightly improved too, but only less than 300 waves. So, Han Fei didn't think there was much difference between the rank of 5 million and the rank of 4,800,000 in terms of life level or bloodline. Of course, maybe it was because the Tao-seeking fish was only a legendary creature, and Han Fei's bloodline level was similar to theirs. So, there wasn't any difference. The King Sparrow, on the other hand, had reached level 75, which made Han Fei speechless. How long had it been since he came out? Had the King Sparrow grown so much that it didn't make any sense? Han Fei thought to himself, when I return to the yin-yang sky and get the essence blood of the King Sparrow and the others, I'll definitely be in the top 10,000 of the 10,000 species in the vast ocean. At this moment, Han Fei immediately swallowed the essence blood of Water Luster. When the shadow of the big bird appeared in his dantian, Han Fei's information changed. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 89, Half King, 10,000 species in the vast ocean, 4865894, evolving. 0/133 days. Chaotic energy 1, 483, spiritual power 19, 9999, perception range greater than 80,000 kilometers, strength greater than 21,201 waves, first spiritual heritage unknown. Second spiritual heritage unknown, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 78. Second spiritual beast, king sparrow, level 75. Main art, void arrival. Level 7 of void fishing, king level divine. Quality. At this point, Han Fei finally realized that the process of devouring the bloodline of other species wasn't as fast as he thought. When he swallowed the Tao-seeking fish, the countdown didn't show up yet. However, when he swallowed the Tao-seeking fish the second time, the countdown appeared. It seemed that the first time was just for reference. It took 133 days to devour the essence blood of water luster. It was almost 5 times longer than the Tao-seeking fish. Although it would only take more than 8 days in normal time, Han Fei couldn't help but smile bitterly. However, Han Fei couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that the specific operation was much more difficult than he thought. If he swallowed the bloodline of the royal sea white shell, the Ba King, or even the Azure Dragon, wouldn't it take years to devour one of them? Even if it was in accelerated time, it wouldn't be possible without a few months, right? He wondered how much stronger he would be after swallowing the essence blood of water luster this time. Would there be any signs of his realm slipping? On the 5th day, Han Fei was studying the grand mystic body. Han Fei wondered, the demon purification pot can fuse arts. If I put many body-tempering arts of the same level together, will I deduce a more powerful body-tempering art? However, he only had one venerable level, divine quality body-tempering art, the ancient desolate war body. The deduction of the indestructible overlord body had led to the grand mystic body, a supreme technique. Before, Han Fei looked down on the grand mystic body. Although he still didn't like it, it seemed that the level of the grand mystic body was much higher than that of his bloodline in the 10,000 species in the vast ocean. However, after reading the cultivation method of the grand mystic body, Han Fei found that he had to cultivate a boneless body. In other words, he would no longer be a human being without bones. When Han Fei was speechless about the grand mystic body, the old turtle reminded him, "We've arrived at the thunder fire sky." The second chapter, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 17:13. No matter where you were, as long as you had money and resources, good things could be found. Of course, there were also things that he couldn't get his hands on. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't be able to get his hands on them. The middle-aged manager of the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion waved his hand, and a dozen large boxes appeared in front of Han Fei. Bam! 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 The boxes were opened, and Han Fei saw that 9 of them were weapons and battlesuits. Han Fei didn't lack these. There were more than 9,000 pieces of them in Forge the Universe. Why would he want them? So, Han Fei went straight to the other 3 boxes. There was a spiritual fruit, an array book, and a piece of fire crystal in each of them. Seeing that Han Fei didn't care about the ultra-quality divine weapons at all, the middle-aged man immediately realized that this person must have seen treasures like ultra-quality divine weapons, so he was not interested in weapons at all. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "Sir, this spiritual fruit is not easy to come by. This is a dragon blood fruit, an ultra-quality spiritual fruit from the dragon subduing heaven. It grows in dragon blood and is very valuable. It is of great benefit to body refining." In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name, dragon blood fruit, introduction. This is an ultra-quality fruit grown in the land irrigated by dragon blood. It can enhance physical strength, blood, energy, and potential. Level, see expansion realm, quality, ultra-quality, contains spiritual energy greater than 826,000 points. Effect, if eaten directly, it can increase a lot of energy, stimulate the body's potential for a period of time in the future, and improve the strength of blood. It can be eaten repeatedly. Han Fei frowned. This fruit was interesting. However, Han Fei still looked at the other 2 items. The middle-aged man introduced, "Sir, this array book is said to be from the 9 Palace Heaven. You know that the 9 Palace Heaven has been sealed for tens of thousands of years. Can you imagine the value of this book?" Han Fei smiled faintly. The array book from a 9-palace heaven is not necessarily the best, and I don't know how many copies there are. Let me have a look. The middle-aged man was a bit embarrassed, but he guessed that Han Fei's identity was not simple, so he immediately said, "Sir, you can only read 3 pages at most. If you want to read more, you have to buy it." Han Fei nodded slightly. Okay. Han Fei looked at the array book. As the pages turned, complicated and dense array patterns appeared on the pages. However, Han Fei immediately discovered that these complicated array patterns were just the concept of the fusion of arrays. He could also draw this thing, so there was nothing special about it. 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages. Han Fei shook his head slightly and stopped looking at the array book. He asked, "What about this stone?" When Han Fei was reading the array book, his indifferent expression couldn't be hidden from the middle-aged man. After all, having been in business for so many years, he still had a good eye. The middle-aged man immediately suspected that this person was probably also a master of arrays. The middle-aged man hurriedly said, "Guest, the 3rd stone is a special item of our Thunderfire sky. It's called the Thunderfire Stone, and it's a wondrous stone formed by absorbing lightning from a mysterious crystal. It can be used to refine weapons and act as a lightning fire. Of course, 1 Thunderflame stone could only be used for about 100 breaths of time. After all, a heaven-earth spiritual flame like the Thunder Flame is extremely rare. I heard that thunder and fire can be used to refine sea-quelling bizarre treasures. Is that true?" The middle-aged man grinned. "Huh. Guest, of course it's true that thunder and fire can be used to refine sea-quelling bizarre treasures. You know, in the entire 36 mysterious heavens, our Thunderfire sky has made the most sea-quelling bizarre treasures. Most of them are forged with thunder and fire. Of course, we can't see it. After all, it's the power of the Thunderlord." Han Fei nodded slightly. "I'll take that dragon blood fruit. Is there anything better in the 10,000 treasure pavilion?" The middle-aged man was slightly taken aback. There are so many treasures, but this person only wants 1 dragon blood fruit? It seems that this person's taste is very high. However, Han Fei only asked about sea-quelling bizarre treasures and didn't care about ultra-quality divine weapons at all. It must be noted that treasures like sea-quelling bizarre treasures would be fought over by the 36 immortal palaces as soon as they appeared. In the Thunderfire sky, ultra-quality divine weapons were actually the best treasures, which were beyond the reach of ordinary people. Hearing Han Fei's words, the middle-aged man pondered for a moment. "Guest, to tell you the truth, this dragon blood fruit. There are 6 more in the 10,000 treasure pavilion. As for the others," Han Fei suddenly said, "What about techniques? Are there no venerable level techniques in the 10,000 treasure pavilion, except for weapons?" The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment. "Techniques? We do have these, but they're not so precious. Please take a look." The middle-aged man waved his hand casually, and several techniques appeared in front of Han Fei. The middle-aged man said, "Guest, these are already the most powerful techniques that the Thunderfire sky can trade with the outside world. If there are more powerful techniques, we don't know about them. I'm afraid the higher-ups won't allow them to be circulated." Han Fei glanced at them. These books were written Lightning Strike, 9 Forged Thunder Hammer, Thunder Swallowing Body, and Heavenly Fire Body Polishing Technique. The middle-aged man said, "Guest, to tell you the truth, the Thunder Swallowing Body and Heavenly Fire Body Polishing Technique are the best body tempering techniques in the Thunder Fire Sky Venerable Realm. You must also be a body tempering cultivator. You should know how difficult it is and how extravagant it is. You must be buying the dragon blood fruit for this reason, right?" Han Fei glanced at them and smiled faintly. "I'll take all of these. All of them." The middle-aged man couldn't help saying, "Guest, although these techniques are not as valuable as sea-quelling bizarre treasures, they are much more precious than ultra-quality divine weapons." Han Fei smiled faintly. "Does the 10,000 treasure pavilion accept things?" The middle-aged man said, "Of course, as long as your things are good enough." Han Fei waved his hand and threw out 30 ultra-quality divine weapons. Hiss! Han Fei waved his hand, and the middle-aged man was stunned. "Damn it! Are you really not here to make trouble?" He is not from the Thunderfire sky. but he took out 30 ultra-quality divine weapons? None of the ultra-quality divine weapons Han Fei picked were forged by the Thunderfire Sky, because in terms of forging techniques, many of them were spiritual energy forging techniques, which couldn't be from the Thunderfire Sky. Therefore, when the middle-aged man glanced at Han Fei's batch of ultra-quality divine weapons, he immediately said, "Guest, do you want all the dragon blood fruits?" Han Fei nodded. "All of them." The middle-aged man immediately grinned. "Guest, the value of the dragon blood fruit is equal to that of an ultra-quality divine weapon." Han Fei nodded slightly. Of course, in Han Fei's eyes, the value of this dragon blood fruit might be even higher than that of an ultra-quality divine weapon. According to the value of an ultra-quality divine weapon, it was nothing. In the end, 7 dragon blood fruits and 4 great techniques were worth a total of 9 ultra-quality divine weapons. Of course, Han Fei also wanted to sell the remaining 21 ultra-quality divine weapons. There was no other reason but that he had too many of them. The middle-aged man said, "Guest, the ultra-quality divine weapons have different prices due to different styles. I will quote you according to the ultra-quality spiritual stones. Do you have any objections?" Han Fei shook his head. "No." The middle-aged man said, "Guest, if calculated in ultra-quality spiritual stones, the total value of your 21 ultra-quality divine weapons is about 590,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones. I will give you 600,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones." Han Fei thought to himself, on average, an ultra-quality divine weapon is priced at 30,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones. This price is not bad. After all, they were ultra-quality spiritual stones, each of which contained millions of spiritual energy. The ultra-quality spiritual stones were much more useful than ultra-quality divine weapons. Of course, he needed them more. Han Fei nodded. Okay. With more than 600,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones, Han Fei knew that he wouldn't be short of spiritual energy resources for a long time in the future. However, he was still short of some energy fruits. Han Fei asked, "Does the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion sell spiritual fruits?" The middle-aged man immediately smiled and said, "Of course. What type of spiritual fruit do you want?" Han Fei thought for a moment. "Vitality fruits, energy fruits, and highly toxic ones." Highly toxic? The middle-aged man was slightly taken aback. It was understandable that he wanted vitality fruits and energy fruits, but he wanted highly toxic spiritual fruits? What did he mean? Didn't he want anti-poison fruits? Was this person also a poison cultivator? However, whatever the guest wanted, the shop would provide. There was nothing to say. After all, Han Fei was very valuable. Immediately, the middle-aged man stopped guessing what Han Fei was going to do with it. He said, "Everyone, take out all the vitality fruits, energy fruits, and poisonous herbs and fruits in the shop. Remember, all of them." After a while, in a hall of the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion, Han Fei looked at more than 12,000 spiritual fruits. The middle-aged man grinned and said, "Sir, that's all." Han Fei nodded. "That's all." Under the envious gazes of a group of waiters, the middle-aged man happily handed over the spiritual fruits to Han Fei. "Sir, these 12,000 spiritual fruits are already the best stock in our heavenly south region. I don't think you will be interested in the low-quality ones. These spiritual fruits are worth a total of 192,342 ultra-quality spiritual stones. Let me make the decision. I'll erase the 2,342 spirit stones and give you another 410,000 top-grade spirit stones. What do you think?" Han Fei nodded slightly. "No problem." The middle-aged man was very excited. Even in the thunder fire heaven, ultra-quality divine weapons couldn't be made easily. Which island in the Thunder City didn't have a 10,000 Treasure Pavilion? If the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion in the Heavenly South region collected a wave of ultra-quality divine weapons from Han Fei, it could provide more than 50 ultra-quality divine weapons at once. This would definitely cause a small wave of sensation. To refine an ultra-quality divine weapon, first of all, you had to have materials, and secondly, you had to have a refiner. Even a refiner would have to spend several months to forge. Therefore, in the vast Undercity, ultra-quality divine weapons were in short supply. The middle-aged man calculated in his heart that he could make at least nearly 1,000,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones from this business. If he added 2 points, it would be as high as 200,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones. Just thinking about it, he was very excited. The middle-aged man smiled, paid the balance to Han Fei, and said to Han Fei enthusiastically, "Sir, in 7 days, the auction of the Heavenly South region will be held by the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion. If you're not in a hurry, I can arrange the best accommodation for you. At that time, many people from the 13 outer heavens will come, which is a rare event. What do you think, sir?" Han Fei's heart did a flip. There should be a lot of good things in the auction of the outer heavens, right? You could have a look. Han Fei smiled faintly. Will anyone from the 13 inner heavens come? The middle-aged man smiled awkwardly. That's rare, but not impossible. Occasionally, there will be. Han Fei nodded. Okay, then I'll stay here first. The middle-aged man was also taken aback. What he said just now was just polite words. Generally speaking, after doing such a big business, some customers would be worried about their safety and wouldn't let the store arrange accommodation for them. However, Han Fei's attitude was very relaxed, as if he didn't take it seriously at all. Immediately, the middle-aged man was overjoyed again. This customer in front of him is amazing. So, the middle-aged man quickly winked and waved to a waiter. Tianer, come here, take the customer to the heavenly room of the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion to rest. During this period, you just need to serve the customer closely. You must serve the customer well. A young girl, who is only a peak-level hidden fisher, hurriedly ran over and bowed slightly to Han Fei. Sir, Tianer will take you to rest, huh? Right at this moment, a chilly aura suddenly assaulted his face. Han Fei and the others turned their heads, only to hear Nian touch quietly and say, Brother, what a beautiful sister. Chapter 17:14. Different from other people's surprise, Han Fei sensed that Snowmorn was shivering all of a sudden. Snowmorn was his weapon. Why would it shiver for no reason when it saw someone else? Han Fei looked back, only to see a peak-level venerable in a white cloak. She was followed by 2 peak-level junior venerables. This woman's bearing was graceful. She wore a white snow cloak, and her complexion was fair. At first glance, she seemed cold, but there was a hint of warmth at the corner of her brows. Next to her was a peak-level venerable. There was no telling if it was because of the unusual movement of Snowmorn, but when Han Fei looked at the woman was looking at him too. The two of them looked at each other, and they seemed to be a little surprised. The man next to the woman slightly frowned and disliked Han Fei. Han Fei didn't think it was a big deal. However, when the woman passed by Han Fei, she stopped and looked at him. Have we met before? Han Fei had already scanned him in his head and shook his head slightly. No, I haven't. The woman nodded and didn't say anything else. The man next to her, as if to avoid her and Han Fei's eyes, simply asked, Manager, I'm told that the Myriad Treasure Pavilion in the south has an intact dragon blood fruit. Take it out. We'll take all of it. The middle-aged man was briefly stunned and looked at Han Fei. He didn't know that so many people wanted dragon blood fruits today. While the dragon blood fruits were precious, nobody had bought them for a long time. After all, a fruit was as valuable as an ultra-quality divine weapon. He couldn't afford it even if he wanted to. The middle-aged man said, Well, guess from the snow world, the dragon blood fruits in the South Thousand Treasure Pavilion have all been sold. The young man's face changed greatly. What? Not a single one is left? Who bought it? The middle-aged man said in embarrassment, Well, I'm sorry. Sir, the Myriad Treasure Pavilion won't disclose the privacy of any customer. If you want a treasure like the dragon blood fruit, you can wait for a few days. The South Thousand auction will be held in 7 days. If you're not in a hurry. Humph. However, the young man snorted. Rules are dead, but people are alive. All we want is the dragon blood fruit. All you have to do is to tell me who bought it. The woman said, Forget it. Since it's already been bought by someone else, it's the same to wait for the auction. The young man's face darkened. No, Ling, your health is more important. Only items of extreme yang, such as the dragon blood fruit, would have such a miraculous effect. One pill can alleviate nearly 10 years of pain. How can I just let it go like this? At this moment, Han Fei slowly frowned. He hoped that the boss of the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion wouldn't make a mistake. He held Nian Er's hand and said, "Nian Er, let's go." But Nian Er looked at Han Fei, then at the beautiful woman, and couldn't help saying, "Brother, sister seems to be sick. Do you want to give one to her?" Hearing Nian Er's words, Han Fei could not help but shrug. "Looks like I'll have to teach Nian Er in the future. Don't abuse your compassion." Sure enough, in the next moment, the young man behind him shouted, "Stop right there." Holding Nian Er's hand, Han Fei slowly turned around and said indifferently, "What do you think?" The young man frowned. "Brat, it was you who bought the dragon blood fruit?" Han Fei chuckled. "It was me. So what?" The young man glanced at the woman, then lowered his voice and said, "I'll buy the dragon blood fruit at double the price. Please let go." Han Fei smiled faintly. "It's useful to me, so it's not for sale." The young man was about to lose his temper, but a layer of frost blocked him. The woman just now took 2 steps forward and said slightly apologetically, "Fellow cultivator, my friend was a little impulsive because he was anxious to treat my illness. I apologize to you on his behalf. However, the dragon blood fruit is of great use to me. I wonder if you can bear to part with it and exchange it for one." Han Fei couldn't help but grin and sneered. "You only want one?" The young man also said, "Linger, one is not enough." The woman nodded slightly. "One is enough. The dragon blood fruit only treats the symptoms but not the root cause. It's only delaying for time." At this moment, the old turtle's voice sounded in Han Fei's heart. "This person's body is extremely yin and cold because she lacks a soul. If you take something with extreme yang without her soul, it will only clash with her coldness and consume her lifespan." Han Fei replied, "No wonder. This person is at the peak level of the venerable realm, but she makes me feel weak. Can my Tianqi Great Path save her?" The old turtle said, "No, she can't. She has a congenital defect. The power of extreme yin and cold can help her make breakthroughs at an inhuman speed, but it will also consume her lifespan at an inhuman speed. Your Tianqi Great Path can't summon souls, so its effect on her is actually similar to that of the dragon blood fruit." Han Fei understood. In the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion, under the gazes of those people, Han Fei shook his head slightly. "No, how dare you? Brat, you are just a junior venerable. Believe it or not, I'll make sure that you can't walk out of Thunder City." However, the young man was enraged, and he almost flew into a rage. Han Fei glanced at the young man disdainfully. "You're just a peak-level venerable. How dare you make sure that I can't walk out of Thunder City? Are people from the ice and snow heaven so arrogant now?" Arrogant. In an instant, the middle-aged man from the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion and the people around him, including the woman, all looked at Han Fei in surprise. And Yenner also clenched her fists and said, "My brother is very powerful. He's not afraid of you." The young man narrowed his eyes. Is this person's identity not ordinary? He snorted coldly. If the ice and snow heaven is not qualified, what about the golden crow heaven? Hiss, an expert from the inner domain. The middle-aged man gasped. How come even an expert from the inner domain is here? Seeing the woman frown slightly, Han Fei understood what was going on. Han Fei said, "You can call the people of the golden crow heaven and try to keep me here." Then, Han Fei looked at the woman from the ice and snow heaven and said, "You want to use the fire of the golden crow heaven to cure your illness. But you found that your lifespan is being consumed rapidly and they can't do anything, right?" The man shouted, "What do you know? Don't spout nonsense again. Only the golden crow heaven can cure Ling Er's illness." But the woman's pupils suddenly constricted and she looked at Han Fei in surprise. "Sir, are you from the Medicine King Heaven?" Han Fei said. "Can a Medicine King Heaven save you?" The woman shook her head. "No," Han Fei said. "You have a body of extreme yin and extreme cold. Because you lack a soul, any spirit treasure of extreme yang will be extremely poisonous to you. So, I'm actually helping you by not exchanging the dragon blood fruit with you. Otherwise, it will only accelerate the reduction of your lifespan." Then, Han Fei took Nian Er's hand and was about to leave. Han Fei said as he walked, Nian, sometimes helping others depends on fate. You can't help others when they are in trouble. Most of the time, not only will you not help them, but you may also hurt them. Oh, the two junior venerables next to the woman were shocked. How can this be? Holy girl Chu Ling, your lifespan is really decreasing? The man looked shocked. How is that possible? Nonsense, this guy's talking nonsense. Ling you can't trust him. When I become half a king, I will definitely be able to activate the Golden Crow Fire Seed and save you. After a few steps, Han Fei stopped and slightly frowned. Han Fei looked back at the woman and asked, Girl, what's your name? The man from the Golden Crow Heaven said, What do you want? The woman from the Ice Snow Heaven bowed slightly. Bingxue Chuling of the Snow God Temple from the Ice Snow Heaven. Han Fei. Han Fei was stunned for a long time. Sure enough, it was fate that brought them together from 1,000 miles away. But if not, they wouldn't meet face to face. It turned out that Bingxue Chuling was the holy girl of the Ice Snow Heaven, but he happened to meet her in the Thunder Fire Heaven. Han Fei really didn't know what to say. Maybe everything in this world was just a coincidence. The heavenly Tao was full of twists and turns, but there was always a round trip. Han Fei hesitated and said with his soul, I may be able to help you, but I don't like the idiot around you. I'll stay here for the auction these days. It's not hard to find her. Half a king. Bingxue Chuling's pupils constricted again. Han Fei clearly showed the strength of a beginner venerable. However, he could avoid everyone else and directly send a voice transmission to her, which was something that only a half-king could do. No wonder this person was not worried or scared at all when he heard about the Golden Crow Heaven. He was already a half-king, unless he was killed by multiple half-kings or a king. Otherwise, who could easily defeat a half-king? Han Fei said, turned to look at Tian who had been worried to death, and smiled. Okay, lead the way. In the field, the middle-aged man from the 10,000 Treasure Pavilion secretly noted that Han Fei was definitely not an ordinary person. Even when facing the holy girl of the Snow God Temple, he refused resolutely without batting an eyelid. As for the strong man from the Golden Crow Heaven, he looked disdainful. He was definitely strong from the bottom of his heart. He was a businessman. Although his cultivation level was not high, he had seen all kinds of people. Therefore, the middle-aged man immediately confirmed that Han Fei was not an ordinary person. Bingxue Chuling was also surprised. She lost a soul, which was the same as what the Medicine King said. However, he said he could help her. Could it be that he could help her summon her soul? The most annoyed one was the man from the Golden Crow Heaven. At this moment, he gritted his teeth. If it weren't for Bingxue Chuling, he would have already gone up to kill Han Fei. At this moment, he said, Ling this guy is arrogant. Let me investigate his background. Bingxue Chuling frowned and looked at the young man. Okay, Jin Quan. He's right. I do lack a soul. Maybe he's right. The power of extreme yang will only accelerate my death.